Britannico 1986. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. The second young master is back. Master, I saw Butler Hooter, the strong man, who was as strong as an ox and looked a little silly, pointed to the port in the distance, bent slightly and reported in a very respectful voice to an extremely handsome young man standing next to him. The young man is over 1.8 meters tall and has a very strong build. Even compared to the strong man next to him, he is only skinny. She has short golden hair, which is very in line with the national characteristics of the Anglo-Saxons. This is her appearance. Just looking at him will make people ignore everything. Although there is a less obvious scar at the corner of his left eye, this scar not only does not affect his facial features, it even adds an extra element of fierceness to his already sinister appearance. It's so eye-catching. Taking the binoculars handed over by the strong man, Alan Hill looked at the more eye-catching cars at the port and the middle-aged and elderly man in a suit standing next to the cars. This middle-aged and elderly man is the great butler of the Hill family, Huck Carter. This old butler has followed the old Earl and served the Hill family since he was a child. He can be regarded as loyal. Now that the family has suffered a sudden change, this person is one of the few people he can trust. In the telescope, Butler Hooter's face seemed to be normal, but there was an indelible sadness on his face. His eyes were fixed on the cruise ship where Alan was. Through the telescope, the two people's eyes seemed to meet. Okay, have everything been packed? Call our people and get ready to disembark. We're home. Alan's voice sounded low and a little hoarse. After explaining, he handed the telescope to the tall and strong man next to him again, and then turned back to the cabin. In the autumn of 1986, the port of Llanelli was somewhat depressed under the sunset. A few seagulls stood listlessly on the fence on the shore, staring at a few clean cars parked by the port. The middle-aged man stood silently next to the car, staring quietly at the small cruise ship that was about to enter the port in the distance. His iron black suit had sharp edges. His straight waist and slightly raised belly did not affect the man's temperament at all. Although the man's hair occasionally had silver threads, some scattered dock workers in the distance were looking this way. He raised his chin high and narrowed his eyes slightly, not even looking at them. Overall, Huck Carter, who was considered a very elegant man, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the cruise ship finally slowly entering the port. On the cruise ship, the person he was going to pick up this time was the last hope of the Hill family, the second young master of the family, Alan Hill. The second young master in the family is not ordinary. When talking about this second young master, the former butler Hooter always had a headache. The Hill family is a British traditional hereditary aristocratic family with a history of hundreds of years. Although the family honor is somewhat mediocre and the family has never done anything earth-shattering, the Hill family was born as a valet to the king. The family is unimpeachable in its loyalty to the empire. The old Earl of the previous generation was injured during World War II and suffered from serious illness. He left behind a child and left before he had time to run the family well. The old Earl, the father of the second young master, took over the family affairs at a young age. He upheld the family tradition of the Hill family and enjoyed the dividend period of post-war economic recovery. He made the business of the Hill family smooth sailing, starting from the birth of his eldest son. Seems quite talented, and coupled with the fact that he has received orthodox aristocratic education since he was a child, this makes the old Earl seem to see the hope of the family's future. A family like this, who was born as a traditional military commander, is politically flawed in such a peaceful environment. This has always been a thorn in the heart of the old Earl. But the old Count himself is not a candidate for politics. There are still so many restrictions on nobles in the outside world. The Hill family can only be trapped in a royal family forever. Fortunately, God bless and God bless the Hill family. With the birth of the old Earl's eldest son, this young master, who had high hopes for the old Earl, showed extraordinary intelligence since he was a child. Later, the old Earl placed his hopes on his eldest son, hoping to bring great benefits to the Hill family. Some changes have even taken the family further. A few years later, the birth of the old Earl's second son was a bit uneventful. Even with the birth of the second son, the countess suffered from some hidden diseases, which eventually led to her death. This made the old earl have a deep affection for this younger son. A little bit unhappy point. If it weren't for the second young master's handsome face, that was far beyond ordinary people, the old earl would have almost doubted whether this was his own child. Point of the two children of the Hill family, the eldest son was loved the most by the old earl. He was smart, since he was a child, but the second son was taciturn and extremely introverted, since he was a child. His personality was completely opposite to that of his brother. He devoted all his hopes to the eldest son. The relationship between the old earl and his second son, father and son, was relatively dull. Starting from the age of 13, the second young master's personality suddenly changed. It was as if he had become a different person. He suddenly became more willing to talk. However, the second young master's spoken language was a bit stammering, and occasionally exceeded his expectations. Incomprehensible ideas and incomprehensible language. Stuttering is a taboo in Britain. It is not a disease, and it cannot be discriminated against. What's more, the second young master only stuttered slightly for a period of time, unlike the late emperor, but as long as he is not so introverted, the second young master has become more willing to talk to people since then, but this can't change anything. The old earl is still more concerned about his eldest son as usual. For this younger son, he just cares about food and clothing. There is never a shortage of expenses, but not much emotion is invested. In fact, the servants all felt that they preferred this second young master to the eldest young master's unsmiling and strict character, because this second young master is better to serve. Although he is somewhat taciturn and introverted, relatively speaking, he does not have so many strange requirements and hobbies in his daily life. Even if his personality has improved a bit later, these living habits have not changed much. It is just that sometimes, the young master always complains that the food at home is unpalatable. Except for his good looks, everything else about the second young master of the Hill family looks so ordinary. As the second young master enters his youth and goes to school outside, this second young master's academic career is an eye-opener for the servants of the Hill family. The second young master, who has to change schools every semester on average, really makes the servants of the Hill family see what it means to be passionate between people. Although it is a boarding school, the love letters that young master receives every month at school are not calculated by portion, but by weight and pound. A love letter, even if it contains a few more pages, how much does it weigh? How many grams does an ordinary piece of letter paper weigh? Even with an envelope, and how much does a pound weigh? 1 pound is approximately equal to 0.453592337 kilograms. It weighs almost a pound. These are just pure love letters. In addition to love letters, the second young master often receives some strange gifts from some girls, because every month I receive love letters whose total weight exceeds dozens of pounds. The second young master is so dazzling in the Hill family that no one can ignore him. If the territory of the Hill family was not located in a poor and remote place in southwest Wales, but in London, these glorious deeds of the second young master would have been enough for the nobles to laugh after dinner. Quack quack, my big duck is back. This time, I want to take back everything that belongs to me. Subscription. Monthly ticket. Well, of course, the first step now, the launch of the new book, depends on the help of all readers. Add it to your collection and add it to your bookshelf. Recommend votes and invest. Chapter 2 Alan Hill. Since the establishment of the Great Hill family, in the hundreds of years of family history, no family member has ever had such an experience. It does not mean that all children of nobles will be sent to noble schools by their families, and not all noble schools can learn good things. What are noble schools for? Communication and personal connections are more important than actual learning. For a second son like the second young master, and with a somewhat introverted personality, it would be a disaster to send him to an aristocratic school. Facts have proved that when people are too popular, it is often not a good thing, and the second young master of the Hill family is a living example. Faced with such frequent harassment of all sex love letters, due to the strict family rules of the old earl, he cannot fall in love prematurely. The second young master even suffered from autism for a time. Butler Hooter followed the old count's instructions and hired a psychiatrist for the second young master to provide him with counseling. But that damn psychiatrist asked her to provide psychological counseling for the second young master, but she actually fell in love with the second young master and even came close. I'm asking you to help the second young master's psychology, not his physiology. If Butler Hooter hadn't discovered it early, she would have almost succeeded, and she would have almost caused a catastrophe. The Hill family is only one step away from being a laughing stock family. In this way, the second young master's subsequent academic career was intermittent throughout Great Britain. He attended this school for a few months and that school for a few months. After experiencing tribulations and hardships, his high school career finally ended. Before he could go to college, the impatient old earl decisively asked someone to find connections and sent the second young master into the army, becoming a glorious member of the British Royal Navy. Don't wonder why a boy under the age of 18 can successfully join the army. It's because he has connections in his family. As a noble, this is not a problem at all. It is too common for noble children to go to the Royal Navy for gold plating. The Empire is my family, and I rely on everyone to love and protect me. The children of nobles are almost equal to the children of the Empire. The second young master is too troublesome at home, so he should be sent to the army and let his superiors have a headache. More than half a month ago, the old earl, the Optimus Betrayals of the Hill family, who was attending a party with his eldest son, encountered a car accident on the road. Such a sudden disaster completely ruined the backbone of the Hill family and its future hopes. The current head of a family and the future head of the family and the first heir to the earl were killed at the same time, leaving only a huge family estate and a huge mess. Fortunately, the Hill family also has a second young master who is serving overseas. Butler Hooter could only help deal with the old count's funeral affairs while calling the second young master who was still serving. Although this second young master seems to be useless in other places, except his appearance. But as long as he is a legal descendant of the Hill family and has the glorious blood of the Hill family flowing through him, that's enough. The Hill family cannot just disappear. Thinking of this, Butler Hooter sighed heavily, and the whistle sounded, leaving Butler Hooter no more time to think. The cruise ship the second young master was on entered the port. Butler, Hut, don't you recognize me as this horse? Unfamiliar voice sounded, like sharpening a knife. Butler Hooter was slightly stunned, looking at the young man in front of him who was a head taller than himself, and with a stern smile. He even couldn't believe it. He rubbed his eyes and said, "Oh, second young master, is that you? Oh my god." In Hooter's impression, the second young master was not even taller than himself before he left, although the teenager was still in the stage of growing taller. But looking at the young man in front of him who was about 1.8 meters tall, maybe almost 1.9 meters tall, Hooter was still a little unbelievable. Although he knew that the young master had grown taller, and before he came back, he specially asked people to customize new clothes for the second young master, but this change was too big. After staring at the second young master's face for a long time, he felt that the second young master was even more handsome than a few years ago. Hooter sighed with emotion. "If I hadn't seen the little stone, I might not have recognized you. God bless you. It'll be good to come back safely." The little stone refers to the somewhat naive looking strong man following Alan Hill. This is the attendant who joined the army with Alan. According to Alan's understanding, he looks like an ancient Chinese young master. The book boy who follows him around. He is usually responsible for taking care of his daily life. Even if Alan joins the army, he has to follow him. This is the tradition of the nobility. In some movies and TV dramas, a certain aristocratic young man was relatively thin when he was a child and was bullied by some strong children. This is nonsense. Not to mention other children of ordinary aristocrats. Which child does not have a strong reading companion by his side? A young servant. These people help the young masters take care of things. Patting Alan's arm, Hooter's eyes were a little red. The Hill family had undergone a sudden change, and the house was in a mess. Although he was a professional housekeeper, at this time, these things were beyond his ability. This after being ownerless for a period of time, the home finally has its new owner. Behind the second young master, there were several managers and persons in charge of the cruise ship. They personally carried the second young master's luggage and stood beside him, quietly watching Butler Hooter and Alan reminiscing about old times. Only Butler Hooter watched. When he faced them, he smiled and nodded and bowed to Butler Hooter somewhat flatteringly. Ordinary tourists on the ship have not yet been allowed to disembark. This is also the benefit of the privileges of the nobility. Nobles. In Britain, this is a privilege. As soon as the ship enters the port, the nobles disembark first. After they disembark, they will take their turn, go to ordinary civilians, and then disembark. Basically, unless the nobles are willing, there will be no chance of contact between the two parties. At other times, ordinary people, except on TV, rarely have the opportunity to come into contact with nobles in life. Even if they join the army, their starting point is different and their treatment is also different. This is the truth. This is nobility. Hooter waved behind him to signal that someone would give rewards to those who helped second young master Alan carry his luggage. This is not an insult. It is considered normal earned income. The Hill family still pays great attention to dignity. Without continuing to reminisce about the past, Hooter looked at the second young master's clothes. The navy blue navy officer's uniform set off the second young master's upright figure, which was quite different from the impression the second young master had given him in the past. In the past few years, the second young master has grown taller and stronger. He also has a small inconspicuous scar at the corner of his left eye. Let's go home first. Second young master, you've had a hard journey. Let's talk about it after we get back. Hooter used his right hand, bowed slightly, and asked Alan to get in the car. Alan looked at the black Bentley in front of him. The old Bentley had sharp edges and corners, and it looked a bit like the tiger-headed Bentley in his impression. This car, it was his father who bought it, just before he joined the army. He still remembered that his father told him at that time that the land at home had become a burden and he could not make ends meet. If he could sell some of the land to cash out and improve his family's life, he would also be luxurious. 1. Take a seat in the new Bentley. This Bentley worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. You can buy 3 of them. Now there are only 2 of them left. It's so different. After getting in the car, Alan didn't need to worry about other matters as the car started. Butler Hooter drove the car himself, and there were only 2 of them in the car. In the quiet space inside the car, Alan leaned back, feeling a little irritable. Although my father died in a car accident, I still feel a little sad. We have been together for several years since time travel, and we still have feelings for him, although not too much. But damn it, I finally encountered time travel and became a nobleman. I didn't travel to ancient times, but to modern society. Although I came to this strange world and country inexplicably. But finally got a good pregnancy. I came today to enjoy the blessings. I'm here to be a master, and I'm here to enjoy class privileges. In the past few years, Alan was completely addicted to the life of having food to eat and clothes to wear. Although his father was a bit old-fashioned, everyone got along well with each other and didn't talk much to each other. Everything was fine. Chapter 3. Someone wants to pick peaches? Except for those messy things during his school days, everything else in his life made him extremely satisfied. Alan had always imagined life as an adult and is content to be an old man, transformed into a playboy, happily lying on the aristocratic family of the Hill family, being a blood-sucking moth, and living a life of sin happily. Although the inheritance right to the earldom belongs to his eldest brother, and not to him. There is a very interesting phenomenon in dating. In many traditional high-end aristocratic families, the head of the family holds more than one aristocratic title. When holding multiple titles, in addition to the eldest son inheriting the most important title, other titles can be passed on to other legitimate descendants according to the father's wishes. This legal status refers to the offspring of a legal wife with a marriage certificate. And the certificate must be obtained first and then married. It doesn't matter if the order is wrong. As for illegitimate children who want to inherit the title, don't even think about it. And Alan's father not only has the title of Earl, but also the title of Viscount. His title will belong to Alan from now on, and he only has 2 children. This Viscount is his compensation for Alan's lack of care. But with a car accident, everything is gone now. Now, Alan, who fantasizes about living his whole life, was affected by a car accident and returned to before liberation. I want to nibble on my old age, but the person who is nibbled on is just gone. A beautiful life has just begun. Alan, who has only experienced a decadent life for a few short years, has now become the only remaining legal heir of the Hill family and a quasi-count. Normally speaking, after the old earl passes away and leaves the family property to his descendants, besides being sad, the rest should be happy. Moreover, the expected viscount was obtained, and even the earl who exceeded expectations was obtained. But in addition to leaving him a large family fortune, Alan's father also left him several huge foreign debts and other troubles, as well as the extremely harsh and damn inheritance tax for nobles. Theoretically speaking, the Hill family's family business is still very strong. Although Alan has not learned about it in detail, at the dinner table, he heard his father and eldest brother talk about how much income the family factory will make this year. Alan still impressed. If his family hadn't been relatively well off, the old count wouldn't have been so coquettish as to buy a few Bentleys to replace several old cars that had been driven for nearly 10 years. In the past few years, policies have been changing, and the environment in Britain has become increasingly unfriendly to the nobility. The old earl sold some land and several manors in exchange for a large amount of cash, which he invested in the stock market. In Britain, from the Queen to the common people, there are two economic activities that most people cannot do without: stocks and gambling. For a big boss, stocks every day. I listen to other people making whatever decisions they want in the stock market and earn a lot of wealth. But it was finally time for the old count to take action himself. The performance of the young and powerful old count in the stock market can only be described by one idiom: coming and going like the wind. This coming and going like wind, to be precise, does not describe the heroic appearance of the old count himself, but accurately describes the wealth in his hands. Come and go quickly, come and go like the wind. These things all happened in the past few years. When Alan was serving abroad, the old earl only sent him a letter home every quarter. The content of the letter was often very short. Occasionally, he said some words of concern and the situation at home. Rarely mentioned. Butler who told him most of it. Normally, when the old earl was still here, these minor economic problems would not be a big deal to the Hill family if they just gritted their teeth and repaired them. But now something suddenly happened at home, and Alan has not yet completely taken over the family business, and the first thing he has to face is Britain's malicious huge inheritance tax against the nobles if he wants to inherit the Hill family business. Alan will first have to pay a large amount of inheritance tax. He can now sell his property and pay taxes, but the inheritance tax alone has already taken up nearly half of his property. Although most nobles had some way to avoid inheritance tax, these are based on normal circumstances. The old earl is now in the prime of life, so why is there any need to do these things? As for what foundations and trusts? In a financial country like Great Britain, the aristocrats put all their property in foundations and trusts. What is the difference between this and seeking death now, by accident? And at this critical moment, if you want to sell those valuable properties at normal market prices now, you don't even have to think about it. No one is a fool. When everyone knows that you are short of money and have to sell certain industries at a low price to raise funds, how can you live up to the word capitalist if you don't suck a mouthful of blood and swallow a mouthful of meat? Alan can't afford to wait, but others can. The longer you delay, the lower the price of some things will be. This is a dead end. He can't sell off all his property and pay the inheritance tax and have nothing left, right? Taking over a shabby family with only servants and titles. Thinking of this, Alan's eyes even turned red. As a young man who was born under the red flag and grew up under the red flag, when had he ever encountered such a thing? He came to Great Britain to enjoy life. This is not a charity for these capitalists. In his previous life, Alan was just an ordinary studio veteran who was involved in the entertainment industry. I have worked as an assistant director, as a director's assistant, as well as in photography, scene notes, set management, lighting, and so on. However, it is not the same. Due to his lack of fame, he didn't have any investors looking for him to invest in any large-scale film and television projects. The largest film and television project he ever led was an online drama with an investment of up to 600,000 yuan. With his experience and ability, how should he deal with the affairs he faces next? He is now a child without a father, and he can only rely on himself for everything. Could he still be allowed to take out the love letters he had received over the years, which butler Hu Te had kept for him, and use them as scrap paper to sell them as scraps to raise funds? Tons of love letters may seem like a lot, but they are a drop in the bucket when it comes to the huge inheritance tax. And for a man who is about to become an earl, he pays inheritance tax by selling a large number of love letters. If this spreads out, how will Alan live in the future? The Hill family will be completely disgraced by him. Hu Te drove the car attentively, maintaining a speed of 40 miles. He looked at the rear view mirror from the corner of his eye and saw the second young master's eyes in the mirror were slightly red. Seeing the second young master's appearance, Hu Te thought that the second young master was looking for things and missing people. He saw the car that the old earl often used and thought of the late old earl. Hu Te's nose was slightly sour, and he said with some sadness, "Second young master, please express my condolences. The Count's funeral affairs have been taken care of." That is, when he first heard the butler's advice, Alan didn't pay much attention to it, but what happened later already done. Fuck, no matter where you are, no matter what the customs are, is there any reason why the father's funeral affairs have been taken care of before his son comes back? In other words, everything is settled. Then the reason why the housekeeper asked him to come back was to come back to take care of the funeral arrangements. What the hell? Dad's funeral arrangements have already been taken care of before he comes back. Is it some bastard son of a bitch who wants to seize his family property through special means? Although faced with such difficulties, they are not unacceptable. At this moment, Alan's face that was different from ordinary people showed a violent look. Hu Te, that's not what you said on the phone. Seeing the angry look on Alan's face, butler Hu Te was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly realized that the second young master had misunderstood. You can't publish more in the new book issue. I originally planned to publish 2 chapters, but think about it. What's the point of publishing 2 chapters on the first day of publishing? This is not my style. Add a chapter, but results are important, and process is important. Dear readers, please forgive me. I still have to work around for a month, so I can slowly add some recommendations and add them to my favorites. From now on, I can only update twice a day. Sorry, it's not that you can't add new books, it's that new books are added too quickly, and the time to retain new books is too short. I'm a newbie, so my grades will definitely improve. So, I'll make a point first. Please be considerate. Thank you. Chapter 4: The Prodigal Son. No, I'm sorry, I made you misunderstand. This matter was handled by His Royal Highness himself. You won't be back in a short time, and neither will I. It was okay that Hu Te didn't explain. As he explained, Alan's face froze. Prince, isn't that His Highness Charles? Does he want to covet the Hill family's family fortune? But the Hill family is a direct family loyal to Prince Charles, can't it? Butler Hu Te looked troubled and didn't know how to speak. His aggrieved and sad expression filled the car. Alan stared gloomily at Butler Hut's profile in the rear view mirror. There was silence for a long time. Hu Te slowly said, "There are some things about the second young master that I dare not say, and we can't change anything, but the most important thing is to live well in the present. Now you are the only one left in the Hill family, right? As long as you do well, that's enough." Hearing these inexplicable words, Alan felt a chill in his body for no apparent reason, but he was not an idiot. He got it. It seems that the car accident involving dad and eldest brother was probably not an accident. But now that the matter has been determined, and even the prince has personally come forward to arrange the funeral arrangements, then he has no way to resist. He can either choose to fight fiercely, or choose to muddle along. And fight fiercely? How to fight? Should I contact the media? Crazy. A nobleman from a remote area had a car accident in the wild. Under the choice of two. Of course Alan chooses the latter. I see. After Pondering for a moment, Alan nodded. His chest rose and fell violently. He slowly closed his eyes and began to take a nap. Llanelli Port is located in the southern part of Carmarthenshire, Wales, on the British peninsula, with Bristol Bay to the southwest, Ireland to the west, and across the sea, Swansea to the east, and Cardiff, the capital of Wales, to the east. Heading north out of Llanelli is the town of Carmarthen, the largest city in Carmarthenshire. This is also the fiefdom of the Hill family. It is said to be the largest city in the county. The actual size and population are not as large as a town in China in Alan's previous life. In a small town with tens of thousands of people, the Hill family here is the supreme behemoth and earth emperor. There is the Prince of Wales who is far away in London, and there are a few viscounts and barons who are like fishes below. Everyone is still far away. Due to some historical reasons. As an English-born family, the Hill family has its fiefdom, not in England but in Wales, which seems a bit strange. But it was, because the ancestors of the Hill family were loyal servants of the king. Later, after being knighted, as the king's confidants, they guarded the border here. By the way, he had a vague sense of being a royal guard, and helped the king keep an eye on the nobles in these remote areas. In addition to the better scenery and better environment in this quiet place, in the eyes of the aristocratic men in London, this is a corner of the countryside. The Hill family's manor is not in Carmarthen city, but in the suburbs outside the city. After resting for the night, Alan Hill had a simple and unpalatable breakfast, and saw butler Hooter holding a thick stack of documents in the study. This is Alan. Pushed the flat light microscope. Looking at so much information, he felt a little headache. Second, young master, here are the information on the various properties of the family. Who? Ted gently put down the information, picked up a cup of coffee sent by his servant, placed it on Alan's table, placed several snacks, and then patiently began to explain to Alan the remaining family property of the Hill family. Most of the industries have red labels on their materials. This represents the mortgage assets that the bank is prepared to repossess. The remaining small part is the assets that can be sold and realized. There are bits and pieces, weird things, all kinds of industries. As Alan watched, his expression slowly changed from curiosity to astonishment. Picking up a piece of information with a green label, and after confirming it again and again, Alan asked in disbelief, "You said this is our family's property?" "Yes, butler." Hooter nodded firmly. It's just that the beard at the corner of his mouth is trembling slightly. Alan's mouth twitched. He never knew that his family still had such an industry, and he is also very familiar with the products produced by this industry. This Sailor's Happy Days actually belongs to our family? Me in this document, there is very little introduction about this industry. Everything is summarized in just one piece of paper. The rest is followed by thick personal information. This Sailor's Happy Hour is a very popular magazine within the Navy. The content. There is very little text, and more than 95% of the entire magazine is pictures. They are all large scale ones that men like, photos of the opposite sex, and biological knowledge that everyone knows. Moreover, the style of this Sailor's Happy Time magazine is extremely outstanding, and the selection of heroines in each issue is hard to describe. There are very few female protagonists under 40 years old, and most of them are over 40 years old, or even older. As long as you get older, your appearance will also go up in proportion. In the Navy, especially the British Royal Navy, long-term sea voyages are unavoidable. These days, communications are not very developed, and there are not even mobile phones. During the boring voyage at sea, the sailors can only read some magazines to solve problems. Moreover, Alan had heard before that, although the heroine of Sailor's Happy Days is hard to describe, it is still very popular among sailors. Even in the face of countless complaints from sailors, it will occupy every year on every ship, hold some shares. It is said that the publisher has a very broad path, and is following the path of the Navy Logistics Department, with a very strong background. I didn't expect to find out now that this thing actually belongs to my family. It seems that my father's ways are still very wild. Even though my vision is not very good, the heroine I chose is too ugly. Although I haven't read this magazine, I have heard about it. I heard some colleagues say that the heroines in the pictures generally have a bad image. I have always been curious, why not choose some good looking heroines to shoot? Woolen cloth. Regarding this matter. Since they met today, Alan is really curious. He can't figure it out. Pretending not to care, he asked, cough. Cough cough. Butler Hooter coughed twice, thought for a moment, and said with some embarrassment, well, I heard the master say this. He said that this was all intentional. As a sailor, long-term sea voyages and accumulation of desires are actually very scary if you choose a beautiful model as the protagonist. Some of the beauty may be temporary, but as the ship docks, most sailors will have to look for it as soon as possible. By then, if your mind is filled with beauties in magazines, women, the protagonist's appearance, facing the uneven reality of various places, will not be a good experience for the vision and mood. Waterfork. What the hell kind of theory is this? I was afraid that after the sailors docked, it would be difficult to find skilled young ladies, so the heroine for the magazine's photo shoot was deliberately made very old, not pretty. In this way, the late old Earl really worked hard for the vast number of sailors in the Royal Navy of the British Empire. Looking at this dog meat-based business, Alan was a little annoyed and said, sell this one too. I can't do this in the future. How will it be spread out? I will soon be a hereditary Earl of Great Britain, and I still want to make a living by selling magazines like this. Well, Butler Hooter had a troubled expression on his face. He felt a little headache looking at the second young master with an unusual face. As a butler, he should not care about how the master handles things at home. But in his eyes, the current second young master is just a prodigal son who wants to sell his father's land and doesn't feel sorry for him. He wants to sell this and that, and he wants to sell everything. Chapter 5. I can't go back to my old career, right? If all of these are sold, what will be left for the Hill family? Housekeeper Hooter had vaguely imagined in his mind that a few years later, he and his second young master would build a thatched house in a mountain nook in the countryside and live in poverty. Hooter gritted his teeth and said, second young master, you can't sell this. This is an industry that I won with great effort and connections. Our magazine is like the Navy logistics and munitions department. Not only can we make money, there are still subsidies. What the hell? Is this stuff still a military requirement? No wonder. Even if it doesn't look very good, each ship can still maintain a certain sales share. It turns out that the above mentioned unified procurement. When Butler Hooter said this, Alan understood. The truth here is very deep. Sighing, it seems that this thing really can't be sold. It's not a matter of making money or not, but since this thing has connections and can be used as military supplies, then the money earned from this magazine belongs not only to the Hill family, but also to the person who provided the connections behind it. This kind of business was negotiated by the old Count himself. How could he just sell it casually? If you really dare to do this, you are creating a feud. After putting down the information, Alan looked at the remaining industrial information. There was a small and medium-sized food processing factory, mainly engaged in candy manufacturing. There is also an old canning production line, an old radio manufacturing factory that dates back to World War II. There are also several other scattered factories, most of which are industries with very thin profits, but can barely survive. Most of the workers in these industries are civilians whose ancestors lived with the Hill family. In economic terms, most of these are relatively backward real industries with low profit margins and a large number of employees, which are very unstable. These are inferior assets. Expect these industries to sell money. I'm afraid I don't have to think about it. After touching his chin and thinking for a long time, Alan scratched his head and stared at the information with the green label again. The employees working in the magazine Sailor's Happy Time include photographers, lighting, set notes, set management, props, etc. Although it is a photo shoot, although the Sparrow is small, it has all the internal organs. Rounding it off, it is roughly equivalent to a very professional small crew. I can't go back to my old career and make movies, right? Or making porn movies. Alan looked at the information, and suddenly this idea came to his mind. Shaking his head, he realized that his previous life was his previous life, and now he has a title. Wouldn't it be too unsatisfactory to be in the entertainment industry again? As a last resort, Alan really doesn't want to return to his old profession. He wants to be Master Alan, not Director Alan. I'm a noble master. Taking off his glasses, Alan rubbed his eyebrows, glanced at Butler Hooter, who was standing quietly next to him, and said, "Go and do your work first, and I'll look at the information later." Te kept standing next to him, which made him a little uncomfortable. "Second young master, this is the most important thing in the family now. If you read the information, if you have any questions, you can ask me." Butler Te looked at Alan firmly. He was really worried about the second young master. He was afraid that, if he walked out of the study, Alan would contact someone to sell off the property. At that time, the Hill family's hundreds of years of family property would be lost. Destroyed. How should he explain to the late old Earl? Alan looked at Butler inexplicably. There was an inexplicable tragic feeling on his face. What was he doing? "I just want to read the information," quietly sighing. I picked up a breakdown of the current expenses at home. Since I can't open up more money, let's first look at what needs to be cut down. It might as well save some money. Opening the thick account sheet, Alan looked down one by one. The early ones were okay. They were all the wages of the family servants. The Hill family was not the kind of extravagant family. Even when his father was here, all the servants in the family only add up to a few dozen people, which can be considered very light. Now although he was the only male left in the family, these loyal servants were all elderly people who had taken care of the three of them at home for decades, and they could not be fired casually. Although Alan doesn't need so many people to take care of him, he can only take care of him for now. His eyes slowly moved down, and he saw a row of vehicle models and maintenance records. "This is second young master. These are the maintenance records of some classic cars that I cherish. Do you have any questions about this?" "Questions? Of course I have questions." Alan added a little at first, and found that the maintenance costs for nearly 10 classic cars totaled tens of thousands of pounds a year. What is this concept? A Bentley these days costs only a few £100,000, and it is already considered the most luxurious car in the world. The pound is still very valuable these days. £10,000 is enough to cover all the expenses of an ordinary middle-class family for a year. Just such a broken car, that can only be driven a few times a year, and has to spend tens of thousands of pounds on maintenance over the course of a year. Can these cars be sold? Alan's words decided the fate of these cars. Butler opened his mouth, and everyone was numb. Why sell it again? However, the second young master has been looking at it for a long time, and he is not allowed to sell this or that. This time, he feels that, if he dares to say no again, there is no guarantee that he will not be able to leave this study today. If you don't need them, you can sell them. But these cars were all collected by the master with great effort, and they are all cherished by him. Alan slowly raised his head, his eyes a little cold. Even if he was angry, this unusual face still looked so pleasing to the eye. Under Butler Hoote's surprised gaze, although the second young master looked slightly cold, he did not seem to be angry. Instead, he asked, "Butler Hoote, do you know? Whose family is this now?" The middle-aged Butler Hoote lowered his head, and could not see his toes, but only his swollen belly. However, the second young master's words were very lethal. The biggest mistake for a housekeeper is not to mismanage the home, but to make the owner angry, or to overstep the mark. He has already understood what the second young master is asking now. "I was making fun of the old Earl, and I got resented. As a housekeeper, he has no decision-making power as to what happens to the master's family. He only has the right to make suggestions, which can only be made when the master is in a good mood. But it is obvious that at this time, the second young master does not seem to be in a good mood. Sorry, it's me. Go and do your work. I don't like these classic cars. Although it's not a good time to sell them, there must be a source of funds to pay taxes. Go ahead and do what you should do." Butler Hut. Alan waved his hand to interrupt the butler's explanation, and began to make arrangements directly. Hoote lowered his head, and listened to the word Alan said with emphasis at the end of his words. "Housekeeper, he is just a steward." "I understand. I'll do it right away." Bowing, Butler Hoote picked up a few documents and slowly exited the study. Alan stared at Hoote's back until he exited the study, then breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't that he hated the housekeeper, and he knew that he had no selfish motives, but Hoote has not yet adapted to his current identity. The old earl and eldest brother are already dead. This home now belongs to Alan. Does my cover need to be reviewed for 2 days? Will there be so many people opening new books after the new year? Chapter 6. Who wants to harm me? As an emperor and a courtier, if Ute cannot adapt to his new status, then he will have to add more manpower and confidence around him. The elderly people in the family will gradually withdraw from the core layer around him and stay at home with peace of mind. Just provide for retirement. Thinking of this, Alan had no intention of checking the information anymore, took out a stack of letter paper, and was about to start writing a letter when Butler Hooten informed him that his father and eldest brother were in a car accident. He was overseas at the time and had to go through formalities such as military discharge before returning point with so many things to deal with at home. Of course I can't continue to serve, and I can't just ignore it, so I can only apply for retirement. Fortunately, as a noble, everything happens for a reason, so this matter is easy to handle. Before leaving, Alan left a backup plan and leaked some information to many familiar people who could leave a good impression on him. After getting along with him in the past few years, the British Royal Navy has this advantage. All the people on a battleship are a small society. There are talents in all fields. If there are medical soldiers who are proficient in medical skills, they can be recruited and made into their own personal doctors and physical therapists, and radar communication soldiers who are engaged in radar can be hired as secretaries and assistants. Even the pilots who fly anti-submarine helicopters on destroyers can be hired as drivers. Capable of driving and flying airplanes, talents in various fields such as this abound. Even if he is a combatant, he can act as a bodyguard by following him. It can be said that there is a boatload of treasures for him to mine. The children of modern British aristocratic families can serve in the military. In addition to being gilded, this is the only benefit. They can openly and honestly collect the wool of the British and recruit talents for their own families. If you don't collect it, and I don't collect it, how can I, the Great Britain, be prosperous and powerful? The civilians on these ships are also progressive. Enlisting in the army is just a way of livelihood, and being able to stay with a noble, and a big noble at the level of an earl, few people can refuse such a temptation. Now, what Alan has to do is very simple. He just writes to some people he likes very much, extending an olive branch, and then waits for them to come and pledge their loyalty. In the large bathroom, paved with white jade, Alan's expressionless body was soaked in the water, his head lying on the edge of the bathtub, and the water outlet carved with an animal head slowly flowed hot water into the bathtub. In theory, according to it is tradition to light incense when bathing. But Alan didn't like that thing. It was too choking and foggy. The Nordic people in the past had heavy body hair and bathed in hot water. When their bodies were touched by hot water, the smell, it's like scalding the chicken feathers with hot water when killing chickens at the old-fashioned farmer's market. The smell is amazing. Therefore, in order to block the smell, wealthy families use incense when bathing. 3 Aunt level maids with strong bodies, big shoulders and round waists, weighing 200 kilograms, were waiting for Alan to take a bath. What they were holding in their hands were bath towels that they had managed to get from the Far East through connections. The entire Hill family, only the second young master, liked this kind of weird stuff. When the bath towels came into contact with the skin, then touch, how painful it is. Butler Hooter was sitting at the tea seat not far from the bathtub. He wore reading glasses and held several things like invitations in his hand. He said, the second young master has 2 invitations. One must be made. You go, and the other one is at your discretion. Yeah, Alan nodded, looked at Ute and said, let the kitchen make me some dessert pudding. I'm hungry. Although you have just finished dinner, you will lose a lot of water after taking a shower, and you will be hungry, so you need to eat some dessert pudding to replenish it. Ute reluctantly pulled the rope, and the maid on the other side of the bell poked her head in. Let the kitchen make 2 puddings and ask for the taste that the second young master likes. The second young master liked to eat pudding when he was a child. Now that he is so big, Butler Hooter carefully increases the portion for him. After handing over the maid, Hooter shook the invitation in his hand and continued to signal to Alan, second young master, the first one is from Butler Capel. His Royal Highness the Prince wants to see you, and he wants to personally inherit the title for you. Formalities. Theoretically, Speaking, in addition to new nobles, the inheritance of hereditary nobles is generally handled by a special department composed of nobles in Britain. They investigate, go through the process, and issue a new formal document. That's fine, but now Alan is actually awarded by the prince himself. Here, it's unusual. Alan stared at Butler Hoot and didn't reply. He just stared at him quietly. The only sound left in the bathroom was the rustling of the bath ball on his body. Alan, who was covered in foam, had a very cold expression on his face. As this awkward atmosphere continued, even the movements of the maid's hands became lighter. The day my father and eldest brother had the accident, they also went to a banquet. It must be important for my father to take his eldest brother with him to the banquet, right? Whose banquet is it? The old Earl was devoted to his eldest son. Alan was not jealous of this kind of thing at all. He hated fighting with all kinds of people every day, and he even wanted to be a waste waiting to die. But he is not a fool. The banquet that the old Earl can bring his eldest brother to attend must be of high standard. In other words, the identity of the person hosting the banquet is very important. This kind of banquet is the most important occasion to expand interpersonal relationships. Therefore, the old Earl would take the heir he trained with him to expand his contacts, introduce and hand over connections. Hoot's throat twitched slightly, and his voice was dry as he said, "It's a banquet hosted by His Royal Highness the Prince." Snort. Alan slapped his right hand heavily on the edge of the bathtub, and the foam from the shower gel on his hands splashed everywhere. Even Hoot's old, slightly wrinkled face was splashed with a few bits of foam. Crash. Standing up, foam mixed with water flowed down from the body. Alan opened his arms and took a posture and said coldly, "Hurry up and get out. I want to discuss something with the housekeeper. These aunt-level maids have all taken care of him since he was a child. He has already adapted to it in the past few years. Is there anything on him that they haven't seen? Nothing to be embarrassed about." Alan, who was wearing a bathrobe, stood barefoot in the bathroom, stared at Hoot and said coldly, "Father and eldest brother, on the day of the accident, what is the difference between the situation at that time and now? You tell me. If I go this time, will I also get into a car accident?" They also accepted the prince's invitation and went to the banquet. Is he going to have a car accident on the road now? Was it the prince who wanted to harm him? Alan can't understand these things. Alan's heart felt cold now. Even if the inheritance of the family business was stumbling and his assets had shrunk by more than half, what did these difficulties mean compared to life? Now, here we go again. Alan still doesn't understand what's going on. He feels guilty. He hasn't enjoyed enough yet. "I still want to dominate in Great Britain. I don't want to be left alone." It seems that the update time is not good. I now post regularly. Let's try the 11 noon and 1 PM updates first. There is a gap between the two chapters, so there will be a little more traffic. I have no choice but to issue a new book, so forgive me. Forgive me. You gentlemen can just wait until after 1 o'clock to watch Chapter 7, The Historical Origins of the Hill Family. No, Alan shook his head irritably. He remembered that Butler Hoot said that there were some things that he dared not say. Why didn't he dare to say it? The great butler of the hereditary Earl's family, when he stamps his foot, the entire Carmarthen city and parts of southern Wales will tremble for dozens of miles. There is something that he doesn't even dare to say. That's something that even he didn't dare to say. There must be more than just the prince involved. The relationship between the Hill family and the current Prince of Wales is considered to be the closest among the entire British aristocratic circle, except for their royal family, due to some historical reasons. The current full name of Great Britain is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Among them, except for England, which accounts for the majority of the United Kingdom and is distributed in most of the southern parts of the British island of Great Britain. There are also the barbarians in the Northern Highlands and Scotland who are unwaveringly loyal to Britain. To the west of England is Wales, which is loyal to Great Britain. There is still a small area across the sea from Wales, and that is Northern Ireland in the north of the island of Ireland. In addition to these large places, There are more than a dozen enclaves overseas. These dozen enclaves are located all over the world. Theoretically, this can be considered a mini version of the empire on which the sun never sets. This is the composition of the entire Great Britain now. Among them, there is another large loose organization, which is the giant federation headed by the Queen of Great Britain, the Commonwealth. Not much to say about this as for Wales. When they were conquered by the English, they were not particularly convinced. They claimed that the English could only conquer our land, but not our hearts. If you want to conquer our hearts, in addition to food and shelter, you also have to choose a new king for us. Wales at our request, the King of England at that time, agreed to the Welsh request. But this condition is quite harsh. The local nobles hoped that the then British king, which is a prince who was born in Wales and spoke Welsh for the first time, to be the new King of Wales at that time. The King of England took the pregnant queen to a castle in Wales to wait for delivery. This child was the first new King of Wales. In the future British tradition, the male crown prince will naturally obtain the title of Prince of Wales. The ancestors of the Hill family were the personal guards of the King of England at that time, and were later appointed by the King of England as the personal guards of the crown prince. In layman's terms, it can be understood as the commander of the East Palace Guards, and the fiefdom of the Hill family was logically moved into Wales and guarded the crown prince. At that time, the Hill family was the border count. This title not only had a fiefdom, but also had real military power in its hands. As a prince, it was really responsible for protecting the crown prince and guarding the border. As for the whole of Great Britain, in addition to the royal family members, the highest nobles in Great Britain used to be earls, and among the earls, the border earls had military power and fiefdoms. This group of frontier earls with real power later gradually evolved into marquesses, who were one level higher than earls, in order to distinguish themselves from ordinary earls. This is the aristocratic system with British characteristics. As for the Hill family, the successful royal family and the defeated royal family, they were limited by their responsibilities and were regarded as retainers of the crown prince. They were not able to take this upgrade journey and had to be their border earls, but this does not affect their status in the British aristocratic circle at all. For hundreds of years, the Hill family has been loyal to every generation of British and Welsh princes, and these princes will become the kings of Great Britain in the future. It can be said that he is the most upright and popular nobleman among the British nobles. The background of the relationship is very strong, and the family claims to have the merit of following the dragon from generation to generation. Moreover, you can also legally and reasonably jump to loyal objects repeatedly. After each generation of Prince of Wales ascends the throne, the Hill family will be loyal to the new young Prince of Wales after a short period of dominance. In this way, the Hill family, like Cabog, can switch allegiance repeatedly between princes, kings, and 2 generations of British monarchs, except for the British royal family, who can bully the Hill family. Anyone else has to give the Hill family 3 points of shame. But unforeseen circumstances arise, and as of the previous Earl, Grandpa Alan's generation, the new Prince of Wales in Great Britain has been vacant. The new King of Great Britain is the Queen, but she's not the Prince of Wales. There are some other origins here. Don't take it seriously. It's a different world. The title of Prince of Wales is gender specific. The Hill family briefly lost its new allegiances. It wasn't until the new Prince of Wales, Charles, appeared that the Hill family found a new backbone. And Alan's father, the old Earl, is very loyal to Prince Charles. The relationship between the Hill family and the royal family needs to be strengthened now. The convoluted relationship here is why the Hill family is only a family of earls, but it is a large noble family directly subordinate to the prince. They are the true confidants of the prince. But does this current person of allegiance want to harm him, Alan, the only remaining heir to the Hill family? This shouldn't be the case. Butler Hooter looked at the second young master's irritable muttering. His face was tangled, gritted his teeth, and said, "Second young master, His Royal Highness has summoned you, and you have to go, even if you don't want to go." Hold, Alan took a look at Hooter and suppressed the irritability in his heart. The current situation is the title succession procedures are still in the hands of the prince. It's a knife to extend his head, and it's a knife to shrink his head. Can he still run away? Even if he ran, where could he go? He could only follow the invitation and go see the prince. There is no other way. Whose is the other invitation? In Such a miserable moment. Someone else actually invited him, and he wanted to see what blind thing was causing trouble. It's a wealthy Korean businessman who invites you to talk about a land development project. Korean rich businessman? Bangzy. Alan was stunned when he heard Hooter's answer these days. He hasn't seen Asians in many years. The racial distribution in Wales is amazing. According to statistics from the year before last, 99.7% of the white population is white, and the remaining 0.3% of other races are basically blacks and Indians. Today in this remote place, a Korean actually came to see him. How rare. The 4 Asian tigers of this era, not to mention Japan and South Korea, are really rich. Let's not talk about the islanders. They claim to buy the entire United States, but Bangzy Allen rarely heard about their deeds. But he didn't expect Zia Bangzy and the others to start marching into England now. That's a bit interesting. Before the long lost novelty had time to make Alan happy, he was stunned. Although he had not officially inherited the title, his identity was here. The majestic Earl of England, with his current status. Could a mere wealthy Korean businessman invite him? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Viscount Fox. Even if they want to invite Alan, Butler Hut is still here. Logically speaking, such an invitation should be thrown into the trash can by Butler Hooter immediately. What kind of country bumpkin comes from a bigger place? The Count of Great Britain is someone you Korean country bumpkins can meet whenever you want. But now, just such an invitation was actually taken by Hooter himself to consult Alan's opinion. This is somewhat relevant. Whose channel did this invitation come through? Hearing Alan's question, Butler Hooter nodded happily. It seemed that the second young master was not a complete prodigal, and he also knew how to inquire about the connections behind this wealthy Korean businessman. Second young master, the invitation was handed over to them by Viscount Fox's family. Alan raised his eyebrows and finally had a smile on his face. Oh, who did I think it was? It turns out to be this old guy Fox. Speaking of Viscount Fox, Alan was impressed. Although this old guy is a viscount, he is extremely capable of disgusting people. The two families were originally incompatible with each other. But when Alan was in school as a boy, the old guy's granddaughter was in the same school as Alan. The noble lady of the Fox family was fascinated by Alan's appearance when she first met him. European and American women mature early and become sensible even in their teens. The eldest lady launched a fierce pursuit of Alan at that time, sending love letters and gifts. But if you were good looking, Alan would be able to smile at her reluctantly. But her appearance, her long face, even with makeup on, would not be rated as 4 points on a 10-point scale. It's so miserable. With such a sweeter, Alan didn't even think of taking a second look at her. The eldest lady was so hurt by Alan's attitude that she once went on a hunger strike at home. Later, at a certain meeting, her grandfather, Viscount Fox, talked about this matter with Alan's father, the old Earl. I don't know what the old guy was thinking, but they started to quarrel while chatting. Who is the old count? Born in a military family, he is upright and young, and his eldest son has grown up according to his plan. It is a time for high spirits. The old Earl who dominated the entire Welsh region was kicked in the face by a mere viscount. How can that work? Just like that, something big happened in Wales that year. The hereditary Earl of Carmarthen beat Viscount Fox, who was over 60 years old, in the conference hall in front of dozens of nobles. Viscount Fox was severely wounded by the iron fist of Earl Carmarthen. It took nearly half a year to recover in the hospital before he recovered. This incident spread like wildfire throughout the British aristocracy, and even a few very high-ranking civilian politicians knew about it. To the end. The Queen just wrote a letter and severely reprimanded the Earl of Carmarthen. Thin fears no after that. From then on, Fox, an old man, held a grudge against the Hill family, but when the old Earl was still alive, he didn't dare to let loose a fart, because he was afraid that the rude old Earl would beat him to death. But now the old Earl died in a car accident, leaving only his legendary youngest son who was good for nothing except his looks. Alan Hill, this male lion suddenly died suddenly, leaving only a solitary lion cub who looked like he was not good at cooking. The hyena was hiding in the dark and peeping, and came after smelling it. It looks like Fox wants to give Alan a try. Time and location. Alan decisively agreed to the meeting. Hooter was stunned. He thought the second young master would decisively refuse this, turning over the invitation in his hand. Butler Hooter narrowed his eyes slightly, stroked his reading glasses and said, "Tomorrow night, the place will be Old John's Crazy City." Butler Hutt's volume increased slightly. Old John Crazy City. This name sounds weird, but to translate it, it is roughly equivalent to the feeling of a certain KTV in later generations, swinging wildly. Karuzed. That's what it means. They've booked the place for you to have a banquet. After saying this information, Hooter closed the invitation with an expression on his face, as if he had eaten shit. It was the information on the invitation that really impressed him. I don't know how to describe it. A wealthy Korean businessman came to Great Britain. He was extremely arrogant and had no eyesight. He made an appointment with a hereditary earl and chose the place of the appointment in such a frivolous place. It seems that to show off their financial resources, they even booked the venue. This kind of behavior, which is not even considered as an alvorish, has a strong rustic atmosphere from the invitation. I don't know where Viscount Fox found such a strange thing. Old John Crazy City? Haha, what a great place, what a great place. What date is your highness's date? Alan laughed. The place the Koreans found was very much in line with his wishes. In fact, Bangsi was so considerate that he reserved the venue. It was really great. The time set by His Royal Highness is a day after tomorrow. If you insist on meeting the Koreans, the time is a bit tight. Butler Hutt frowned slightly. There was more than 300 kilometers between Carmarthen and His Royal Highness the Prince's Manor on the outskirts of London. It doesn't matter. It won't take long to meet a Korean. Okay, I'm going back. Alan didn't care. When he was about to go out, he suddenly stopped, patted his head and said, "By the way, I almost forgot. Hooter, collect a piece of information about this wealthy Korean businessman and give it to me tomorrow. Especially him. The net worth and property in Great Britain are probably enough." Hooter was confused by Alan's words. After being stunned for a moment, he looked up again and saw that the second young master was already gone. Looking at the invitation in his hand, Hooter suddenly remembered that the second young master was gone. What was he still doing here? This is dereliction of duty. He hurriedly rang the bell and waited for the valet to come over. Hooter loudly ordered, "The second young master has just gone back to his room to rest. Is the beautician ready?" The second young master has been going there for several years and his skin has become tanned. Last night's treatment. Is he not satisfied with the facial mask? Don't use yesterday's formula. Ask the beautician to change the formula. Go quickly. Yes. Butler. Master. Have the letters been sent out? Alan looked at the tall figure standing at the door of the bedroom and knew that it was Zio Shitao who had sent the letter back for him. It's all been sent to the post office through military channels. Don't worry, Zio. Shitao's voice seemed low, and he tried hard to lower the volume point, but his tall physique is not something he can lower down if he wants. Okay. Go and make me 2 cups of scented tea. Zio Shitao, come in and talk. Alan ordered the maid who was following him, and brought the small stone to his bedroom. It was said to be a bedroom, but there was also a private reception area in the more than 60 square meter bedroom. Alan took it upon himself to turn on the record player. The needle touched the film, and soothing music slowly played. Now the family's finances are not good, and they don't even have a basic musician. They are really too poor. Chapter 9 Master, if it doesn't work, just do it. Zio Shitao looked at his young master's busy back with slightly red eyes. Except when he was serving in the navy, had the second young master of the dignified Hill family ever suffered like this? Although the second young master was not particularly liked by the old earl, the young master's food and clothing expenses, since he was a child, are no worse than the eldest master, although starting from the time when the young master was 13 years old. the young master has made some more small demands, but these small requests are insignificant in the eyes of Xiao Shitao. For example, the young master never drinks water at home, only natural mineral water imported from France. But what does this mean? For the Hill family, this is really a very simple and insignificant request. As for some other gadgets, it is even more insignificant. This is how the second young master lived in poverty, and now, I'm so worried about this family. There was a rare tangled expression on Xiao Shitao's rough face. He thought for a long time, hesitated, and then said softly, "Master, I know you are worried about inheritance tax, and I can't help you. Otherwise, if that doesn't work, just pick the daughter of a wealthy American businessman, marry her, and let them give you a bigger dowry, so you don't have to work as hard as you do now." Alan, who had just turned around, looked at Xiao Shitao's ugly wrinkled face, and his arrogant words, and his hand shook unconsciously. "What nonsense are you talking about? You want me to marry an American hillbilly? Our Hill family will become the laughing stock of the entire United Kingdom from now on." Following Alan's scolding, Little Stone shrank his neck. He doesn't quite understand the twists and turns, but I didn't expect anything like this to happen. Now, as expected, he was scolded by the young master in the eyes of Britain in this era, and even in the eyes of British civilians. The United States, isn't that just the remote countryside? There live country bumpkins who smell like copper, and have nothing left in their eyes but money. They are barbaric, ignorant, and have no cultural background. To say that they are Navo-rich is the best compliment to them. In the eyes of people from other backward countries, those wealthy American businessmen who are superior to others will naturally want to give their so-called family a high-end coat after they make money. But due to historical reasons, those who crossed the Atlantic to develop in the Americas were all from lower-class civilian backgrounds or bankrupt. Low-level nobles. How could these rebellious descendants have any distinguished ancestors? In this way, coupled with the fact that the two sides even have different religious beliefs, Americans have always been looked down upon by the British. A few years ago, some wealthy American businessmen who offered high prices gave their daughters to some low-level British nobles as wives, and also gave them a large dowry. The two parties formed a marriage. One party wanted money, the other wanted status. Such a trivial matter was actually flaunted and publicized by those shameless wealthy American businessmen in their own country, and even made into a movie. They have climbed to a high branch, and they will be relatives of the nobles from now on. Is that ridiculous? Although those low-level nobles received a considerable amount of dowry, they could not survive in Great Britain, and became the laughing stock of the British noble circle. It was simply a few low-level nobles who couldn't survive. Later, fewer people talked about such things. Now that Xiao Shitao mentioned this, Alan suddenly became anxious. He is a majestic hereditary earl. Marry the daughter of an American businessman. Are they worthy? Let their daughters work as maids for Alan. And Alan even dislikes the smell of copper on their bodies. In the English aristocratic circle, the upper class nobility, except for the royal family, basically only intermarry within the family, and they must be well matched. Although this understanding seems a bit weird or incredible, this is the value that Alan has been influenced by his family in the past few years. Maybe at some point, from different perspectives, it seems that Britain and the United States are all on the same side, but as soon as their positions change, problems arise. Alan is now from England. The entire British aristocratic circle has this kind of understanding of wealthy American businessmen. Think about it. On their side, a person with the title of lower British lord, who is basically not a noble in Alan's opinion, is actually a celebrity in the upper class of the United States. Thus there is a huge gap between the two sides in terms of their traditional heritage. It has become inevitable to look down on them. Except for some financial transactions, at other times, Americans are naturally despised by the British, rebellious, country bumpkins, and barbarians. Okay, the inheritance tax at home is not something you should worry about. You go check those two Bentleys early tomorrow morning. Be sure to check every detail from the inside to the outside. I will do it the day after tomorrow. Going to Swansea, master. Are you saying that there is something wrong with our car? Xiao Shitao's voice suddenly became louder. Holding tea in her hand, the maid who had just entered the bedroom was startled. Put it on the table, close the door and go out. Alan, waved his hands. "Master, please you sit slowly." The maid nodded, gently put down the scented tea, backed away slowly, and finally closed the bedroom doors. Xiao frowned and said in a low voice, "I'll do it now." "Why? Are you so anxious?" "I won't go out until the day after tomorrow." "You go and do it now. You have been waiting in the car for such a long time." Yes, I understand. I will go early tomorrow morning, then." "Young master, when we go out this time, shall we bring heavy weapons?" Xiao blinked and said, "What the hell? Why don't you drive a tank? Just bring a pistol. By the way, go to the police station tomorrow and ask Rex to bring a few people with me." "Okay, do as I say." Alan had a headache, and Xiao's temper was a little irritable, so he waved his hand and asked him to go back and rest. First point on the day that I had agreed to meet with the Korean businessman. Just afternoon, the black wrought iron gate slowly opened at the gate of the Hill family's manor. 2 Bentleys filed out. The old concierge was a strong white man with grey hair and a bit of a stoop. He frowned as he watched the 2 Bentleys slowly going away, and being stopped again. He shrugged his nose and turned around to walk back without closing the door in a hurry. "Alan Hill. Nice to meet you, His Excellency the future Earl of Carmarthen. I'm Hurt George, from the Ministry of Peerage, and this is," wearing a light blue suit with bright thread decoration. His blonde hair was covered with a thick layer of hair gel and combed back into a big bun. A staff member of the Noble Affairs Department, about 30 years old, stood in the middle of the road to stop him. Driving a Bentley, he spoke loudly, and as his fingers moved, he pointed at a fat middle-aged man standing behind him, ready to introduce. "Shut up, you idiot. Who told you to stand in the middle of the road and block a car like this? If you disturb my young master, I'll kill you." Xiao drove the car himself, and Alan sat in the back seat. Xiao in the driver's seat pressed the window, the glass only lowered halfway, and shouted loudly toward the outside of the car. Hurt George frowned slightly at the scolding. He bent down and glanced at the driver. Xiao pointed with a sneer on his face. He continued, "It's not easy to meet His Excellency the Quasi-Count once. There is nothing we can do. Please forgive me. Where is my collection? What about investing? What about recommendation votes? What about popularity? Why am I so cold? I'm a little duck who has lost his temper." Chapter 10. Crazy. Alan frowned slightly and glanced to the right, following Xiao's side face, and then saw the face of the person blocking the road through the gap in the car window. He curled his lips, looking like a human and a dog. Hurt George bent over, finally saw Alan Hill sitting in the back seat of the car through the pitiful gap in the car window. Keeping an elegant smile on his face, he said, "Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I'm accompanying this person here because I want to talk to you about the issue of inheritance tax that you have been putting off." Before he finished speaking, Hurt took a step aside, revealing the middle-aged man behind him. The man was a little bald. When it was his turn to appear, he looked expressionless just now. Looking at this somewhat inhumane scene, he didn't know what to do. Don't you say that noble gentlemen are very polite when you meet a guest on the roadside? You should at least get out of your car and meet them, right? Even if you don't get out of the car, at least open the back window. The window on the driver's side in front was slightly open, and I had to bend over to look in, even when I was talking. It was really depressing. "Hello, dear Mr. Hill." The middle-aged man struggled to put on a humble smile on his face and looked towards Alan Hill, whose face was unclear in the car, to introduce himself. "Damn. Fake. I've only been home for a few days. Hurry. The inheritance tax belongs to your father. I don't care how you go back and explain. I'm sorting out the family's assets. If you push me, I will bury you. Get out." Although not loud, an unusually cold voice came from inside the car. The hunched-over middle-aged man still had an awkward smile on his face, but he was confused by Alan's sudden scolding. Since when did estate tax delinquents become so awesome? Who I'm. Where am I? What do I want to do? 4 philosophical questions filled the middle-aged man's mind, and his face began to turn red with anger. "It's too rude of you, Your Excellency." The middle-aged man maintained a trace of sanity and raised his fingers slightly with trembling. In his decades of career, when had he been treated like this? Is this dog training? You, a pariah, dare to refer to our young master?" The middle-aged man was angry, and Xiao, the driver, was even more angry than him. In broad daylight, in England, Wales, Carmarthen, and on the road not far from the gate of the Hill Manor, the majestic Earl's car was actually killed by the untouchable blocked the road, pointed directly into the car, and called the Count rude. What a courage. Going forward 100 years, would a pariah like this dare to stop a noble's carriage? If he were replaced by little Shitao as the groom, he wouldn't even pull the reins, or blink his eyes. He would just ride the horse and run him over to death. Even if it kills him, it's not over yet. Someone has to be found to claim the body, find their home, and make this group of untouchables bankrupt, and compensate the noble master for the hoof cleaning of the horses pulling the carriage. Get rid of this garbage, and don't delay my dinner. If you don't leave, I'll call someone. Alan's words were also heard by the two people outside the car. Rubbish. A dignified civil servant is called trash. This is a blatant insult. Now even Hut, who was watching the fun next to him, was angry. Xiao didn't hear anything else. He only heard Alan's last words, call someone. With his left hand, he took out the pistol placed next to the shift lever, stretched out the window, and quickly fired 3 shots into the air under the confused eyes of the middle-aged man and Hurt. Bang, bang, bang. Hurt subconsciously reached out and pulled the middle-aged man beside him. When he saw clearly that the driver was shooting into the air, he just breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he saw a few old guys running out of the gate of the Hill Manor in the distance. Seems to be holding a rifle in his hand. Get down. Just as Hurt was about to pull the middle-aged man down, gunfire rang out in the distance. Following the gunfire, several old guys in the distance were still approaching quickly, and they were still scattered while running. Battle charge formation. Snap, snap, snap. The dense gunfire in the distance sounded crisp and hollow. The old-fashioned Lee-Enfield single-shot manual rifle was used by them to have the effect of a semi-automatic rifle. The 2 rear wheels of the black car parked by Hut and Hut on the roadside, whose brand could not be seen clearly, were blown out at the first moment when it was pointing towards the manor. Hut, who was squatting on the ground, saw this scene and was so frightened that his face turned pale. He is knowledgeable. This distance, this shooting technique, this routine. The other party is afraid that they will get in the car and run away. These are not fucking bodyguards. These are a group of veterans, and it is 100% that he has the results in his hands, and he is also an extremely elite veteran. Hurt was so frightened that his scalp was numb. The middle-aged man next to him was even more unbearable than him. A pool of liquid had flowed down his trouser legs and onto the ground on the roadside. Dozens of gunshots rang out, but the 2 of them were fine. But as long as they dared to move, dust from the bullets would rise under their feet. Hurt is not a fool. This is the first time he has seen this scene, but he understood what the other party meant, so he could only squat on the ground and raise his hands, and the middle-aged man next to him did not dare to move. Protect the second young master. Quick, quick, quick. York, Tom, go and search. Before anyone could reach him, Hurt heard a loud roar, full of energy. Immediately afterwards, I felt my collar being roughly lifted from behind, and then, Hurt and the middle-aged man were pressed against the side of their car like 2 little chickens. Their arms were folded behind their backs, and a pair of thick hands pinched the wrists behind him with one hand. The bend of the knee joint of his left leg was also held up by the opponent's knee, making him unable to move. The other hand began to pat and search him. The person's actions were quite professional. In just a few minutes, it felt like a long year to Hurt. When he was turned around, the Bentley's rear window slowly lowered. Only then did he meet the so-called quasi-count, Alan Hill, for the first time in a real sense. This face even made Hurt's heart tremble twice. Alan's eyes were cold. Anyone who was stopped at the door of his house and asked for money would not have a good temper. He was still facing an inexplicable threat to his life. How could he have any other concerns? Seeing this kind of money demanding bullshit, it would be an exaggeration to kill them. TSK, 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 this unknown gentleman, your excrement has really polluted the land of our Hill family. Alan stared at the slightly darker color of the land on the roadside, which was incompatible with the surrounding land, and sneered. The middle-aged man was already confused. At this time, his mind was blank. What he had experienced in just a few minutes felt like a lifetime. My ears were filled with the sound of swishing and bullets passing by. The sound of cars being hit, bullets hitting the ground. Crackling sounds and smoke. This is 10,000 times more exciting than those war movies and gunfight movies in movies. He even thought he was going to die, until now, even after hearing Alan's ridicule. The middle-aged man didn't even react. His legs were trembling, and the yellow liquid was still flowing down his trouser legs. He was almost scared out of his wits. Chapter 11 Shocked. Who is that? Alan shouted softly. These veterans were the personal guards assigned to his father by his grandfather. They were all veterans who had come off the battlefield. The old earl of the previous generation had picked together a dozen or so elites to guard the home and nursing home. As for this tradition of gathering British wool, the old earl of the previous generation was also very skilled in it. Alan couldn't remember their names, so he just greeted them casually. Second, young master, the people are under control. There are no weapons in the car. This gray-haired old guy is the old white man who was guarding the door of the manor just now. He approached Alan's car, lowered his head, and leaned against the car window and said, Alan. Nodded, shook his left hand, and looked at the time on his watch. It was 12:40. Not bad. This is still 20 kilometers away from the border. Let them get out of the territory within half an hour. If they can't get out, just capture them and bury them under the grapevines as fertilizer. I remember that the grapevines at home are several years old. Haven't you fertilized yet? I haven't buried anything in 5 or 6 years. Well, send a car to keep an eye on them. Having said this, Alan finally glanced at Hurt, who had been confused next to him, and said, by the way, take away the soil you soiled. Don't pollute the land of our hill family. Stones, drive. The two Bentleys started slowly, and drove away slowly, as if nothing had happened. Hurt and the middle-aged man stood there, and had not yet recovered. The old white man holding the rifle next to him held the barrel of the gun in his right hand and the butt of the gun on the instep of his right foot. He looked at these two losers, raised his left wrist, and looked at the time and said, you still have 28 minutes and 0:11 seconds. York, go get a car, and bring the rocket launcher. The middle-aged man glanced at Hurt in confusion. Hurt suddenly grabbed the middle-aged man's coat, and took it off. What are you doing? Hurt, idiot. Clean up these lands quickly, it's all your fault. Hurt laid the middle-aged man's suit jacket flat on the ground, and took out his beloved silver business card case. Now he didn't care about anything. He used the thin business card case as a shovel, and began to scrape away the puddle of urine on the floor. Liquid polluted land surface layer. He finally saw that these people were serious. Now your life is in the hands of others. You can do whatever you are told, and don't think about anything else. This middle-aged man has never seen the consequences of bumping into a noble, but Hud knows it very well. This is Carmarthen, the entrance to the Hill family estate, and the real fiefdom of the Earl. It's so easy for the Hill family to kill everyone here. As for the reason, don't you deserve to be beaten to death if you trespass on private property? The Hill family is currently in a tense period. The previous Earl and the Earl's heir have just been killed. If they are casually accused of trying to assassinate the new prospective Earl, their deaths will be in vain. Here, even if Jesus came, he could not save them. The black car, with its windows smashed, was stumbling down a country road. Since both rear tires were smashed, the sound of the rear wheels scraping against the ground was extremely harsh. The driver was nervous and sweating profusely, staring straight ahead and tightly controlling the steering wheel with both hands. Today's vehicles are very difficult to operate, and there was a slow-moving, menacing pickup truck staring at them. Fake. Hurt, we almost went to see God. The frightened middle-aged man finally came to his senses, but his face was still pale. Shut up. Hurt glanced back. It was already very cold outside in November. The broken glass on the car window occasionally splashed onto him as the vehicle bumped along, making him extremely angry. Uncomfortable. Looking at the pickup truck behind him, there was an old machine gun older than him in the back compartment of the pickup truck, and there was also one leaking out of the window. That dark Soviet-made rocket launcher. Madman. Madman. Hut. Didn't even know how to describe this group of people. When he came here a few days ago, although Butler Hutt's attitude was not very friendly, the two parties got along quite happily. Why didn't he even bother to look at these things in just a few days? How did the old man at first sight become like this? They have so many weapons. Isn't this illegal? The middle-aged man looked angry. Great Britain is not America. Free America. Shootings every day. Statistics from the year before last showed that the current civilian gun ownership rate in the United States reached 90%. What is this concept? As many as 9 out of 10 Americans have guns on their bodies or at home. And what about dating? Although in theory, civilians can also buy guns with a certificate. But what about this certificate? If you want to apply for it, you really need to check the 18th generation of your ancestors, and even your physical and mental conditions. Only then can you possibly apply for such a certificate. The gun ownership rate in the entire UK is now hovering around 5%, and this statistic includes the police in some places, and in Carmarthen. The Hill family alone probably accounts for all the gun ownership rates in this area. In the eyes of middle-aged people, in such a harsh environment, this group of people even have heavy weapons, which can be said to be lawless. Hurt looked at the middle-aged man next to him, as if he were an idiot. The middle-aged man touched his face and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Do you know what the Earls of Carmarthen represent? They are one of the earliest border earls. Their duty is to protect the Crown Prince, deal with local riots. It is legal for them to have guns. Do you still want them to use them? Protect the Crown Prince with fists? Deal with riots?" It was only at this moment that Hurt gave the social elite among the civilians in front of him such partial knowledge as popular science. Why was the Earl of Carmarthen's estate built outside Carmarthen rather than inside it? Look at it from another perspective. They are like sheepdogs, and the people who live in Carmarthen are like a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered in the sheepfold. When nothing happens, everything is fine. Whenever something goes wrong, it's time for the sheepdogs to take action. However, a long time ago, the British military system was not divided into regiments and camps. The number of troops the nobles have in their regiments depends entirely on the financial resources of the nobles. As the Crown Prince's bodyguards and local garrison, the Hill family must have had no shortage of soldiers or guns at that time, all of which were allocated by the royal family. Not to mention the wool-gathering behavior of successive earls after so many years of accumulation. Who can tell how many weapons and ammunition are hidden in the vault of their manor until now? And now the armed force of dozens of people in the Earl's family is already the product of modern policy changes and the weakening of the nobility. But even with such power now, it is still very important around the entire Carmarthenshire. An armed force of dozens of people, with both light and heavy firepower, and all the personnel are veterans. Think about what kind of power this is. Although their weapons are somewhat old, a weapon that can kill is a good weapon. And now this middle-aged man actually dares to question whether it is legal for the Earl of Carmarthen to have a gun in his house. It has been legal for hundreds of years. This is the right given by the King of England. Chapter 12 Plan. Hurt believed that, if he were not in the car now, these words would have been heard by the old guys in the pickup truck behind him. They will most likely use bullets to let the man know that he can question anything at will. Of course, this kind of behavior can only be limited to the Hill family's own territory, and it will not work outside of Carmarthen. Zioshitow's car drove smoothly. The time for today's appointment was set at 7 o'clock in the evening, and it was just afternoon. Carmarthen was not too far from Swansea. It was more than 40 kilometers away, and took about an hour. You can get there. Alan picked up the information at hand. Butler Hoot had given it to him yesterday, but he had never had time to look at it until now. When I opened the profile, I saw a photo with a big face. I couldn't tell my height, but with this face shape, I looked like someone who wasn't very tall. Name, Jin Zayon. Age 33 years old. Family, Kim Development Group. HSBC. Liquidity, approximately £700,000. Fixed assets, a small manor in the western suburbs of London. 2 warehouses in the West End of London, and a warehouse in Flixstowe Port. As he flipped through the information at the back, a smile slowly appeared on Alan's lips. This little stick named Jin was considered a second-generation rich man. Starting from his father's business, in the past 10 years, it has developed to this day. In the UK alone, except for HSBC's current funds and remaining fixed assets are initially estimated to be worth nearly £1 million. The most expensive one is the large warehouse in Flixtalport. Kim Group, apart from a machinery factory in South Korea, is mainly engaged in overseas trade. Among them, the flesh and blood business accounts for the majority. Some women who wanted to start a business were brought from South Korea to Great Britain. The Jin family has several places in Daeing, either selling them or operating them directly in their own places. This is the main business of their Jin group in Great Britain, and other trades are just pretentious. When Alan saw this, he became more convinced that this Jin Zaeyong was a fat sheep, fox. That old guy thought it would be enough to just find a second generation Korean rich man to suppress him and explore the way. Snort. It seems that the Fox family still lacks understanding of the Hill family. I won't tell you what Alan was like before, but what is the first thing he learned in the past few years, since he traveled through time? It's the feeling that the old Earl has something that truly belongs to the nobility. Eat meat and be tough. Don't worry about who you are. Let's not talk about those you can't afford to offend. Anyone who can afford it and dares to cause trouble for me will be crushed to pieces, no matter what the other party's plot is. The old Earl was very particular about defeating 10 groups with one effort. Anyway, he rarely takes the initiative to cause trouble. Living in Carmarthen, Wales, no one who is short-sighted would dare to cause trouble for a traditional noble like him. Anyone who provokes him should do it first. Knock off the other party's arrogance first. Nobles, you must not shrink back when encountering difficulties. You must face difficulties. No matter what, you must be brave enough to fight the enemy first. And now Alan also thinks the same way. This is at his doorstep, and enemies are bullying him. Don't care what their purpose is. Don't care how much strength he has. At worst, it's life and death. What's the situation now? He owes a large amount of inheritance tax and there are inexplicable threats to his life. Now he is not afraid of anyone and loves as he pleases. Alan has only one idea left now. Kill this naughty little stick who comes to his door and fully deter those who are looking at the vacancy after the old Earl of the Hill family has left and want to devour the Hill family's legacy. Generation. Rex joined Alan's motorcade at the intersection. 4 policemen drove a very ordinary civilian car and followed the motorcade very low-key. After more than 40 minutes of driving, the motorcade had just entered the suburbs of Swansea. Alan finally came to his senses, patted the headrest of the driver's seat and said, "If you don't go to the hotel, do you know about that market?" "Huh? Master, are you going to the market? It's a bit chaotic over there." Zaro. Shitao was a little confused. That side of the market was a place for civilians. People of Alan's status didn't have to go there all year round. Go over there. Go through the market and drive straight ahead in the direction of the automobile city. I'll show you the way when you get there. Alan was not in the mood to explain. Zero. Shitao suppressed his doubts and turned the turn signal lever. The 2 cars behind followed the lead car and started to turn towards the market. Carl's Auto Repair Shop. It is a very ordinary car repair shop in the suburbs of Swansea. The boss, old Carl, is a short and stocky old man with a big nose of rosacea. He looks drunk every day. This old Carl opened the Carl's car repair shop here a long time ago. It is said that his wife ran away with someone and he has no children. His car repair skills are pretty good. But the only drawback is that it's expensive unless their car happens to break down nearby and they are in a hurry to leave. The surrounding residents would rather drive a little further than repair their car at Carl's repair shop. As time went by, Carl's car repair shop business failed. It was either impossible to continue or the business was just average and he could barely survive. The shabby wrought iron text with a few letters missing from the letters of Carl's car repair shop barely makes it clear that this is a car repair shop. In the courtyard outside, through the open gate, 3 cars drove in. The first 2 were Bentleys and the one at the back was pretty ordinary. Several guys who were repairing the car heard the sound of the engine and looked outside. After seeing this posture, several shouts came from inside. Several extremely strong guys, holding wrenches and crowbars in their hands. He stood quietly at the door, watching the cars in the yard with vigilant eyes. They have been repairing cars here for decades, and have never seen luxury cars like Bentley. A few times, Such luxury cars are not what they serve at all point, and it seems that these cars are not broken, which means that the people coming here are most likely not here to repair the cars, but to cause trouble. The Bentley behind finally opened the door, and 3 old guys with bulging waists and white hair got out. These people, even though Alan's car was stopped at that time, they didn't get out of the car, but this time they hid in the car. In the dark, the old bodyguard responsible for protecting Alan's travels after one of them came forward and helped Alan open the rear door of the car in front of him. Alan finally got out of the car. After taking a look at the several car repair shop guys who were facing a formidable enemy, Alan chuckled, and instead of speaking in a hurry, he began to look around point in the small courtyard with a dilapidated brick wall structure. There was a dilapidated pickup truck parked in the distance, and another truck that seemed to have been scrapped. I heard your boss has some good stuff. Ask him to come out and see me. No need. Who are you? You are not welcome here, Bentley. We don't know how to repair it. I don't have the good stuff you mentioned. Several car repair shop guys turned aside and made way for the short and stocky boss, Old Carl, who came out from behind. Look at this and then talk about it. Alan raised his right hand slightly, exerted force with his thumb, and a silver coin the size of a drink bottle cap was accurately flicked in the direction of Carol. Chapter 13 Old Carl snapped. With quick eyes and quick hands, Carl subconsciously caught the coin with both hands without looking at it. It was such a familiar touch. After his pupils dilated slightly, Old Carol squinted his eyes and took a closer look at the young man standing in the middle, vaguely protected by a few old guys. This face looked more and more familiar to him. Come with me, Old Carl nodded calmly to Alan, gesturing for him to come in and talk. Stone, wait for me in the car, and don't ask any more questions. Master, wait for me in the car. Yes, eh? Few old guys looked at this dilapidated car repair shop and returned to the car honestly. They didn't know why Alan came here, and they didn't know what the good goods he said were point, but that's not what they should ask about point. Just listen to your instructions. Old Carl did not be polite to Alan and silently led the two of them through the repair shop all the way to Old Carl's office at the end. He closed the small iron door of the office and moved the cabinet at the back that looked like a bookshelf, revealing a small secret passage. Follow me. He moved the baffle of the secret passage, groped inside, took out a flashlight, and went down. First point, Alan looked defenseless and bent down, and followed him into the secret passage. Point, the office looked empty again. Second, young master, I didn't expect you to come just now. After so many years of not seeing you, I almost don't recognize you. Hey, don't you recognize it, or do you don't want to recognize it? Second, young master, I was raised by my family since I was a child, and I'm loyal to my family. Okay. Alan took a look at the environment of this small secret room at the end of the secret passage. The ventilation facilities were complete. The overall environment was a bit stuffy, but not humid. Point, surrounded by various stacked iron boxes, there is a wooden desk and a recliner. After walking to the recliner, Alan lay down, raised his head, and glanced at Old Carol and said, that old guy has some things that he dare not say. I still don't know what's going on. Tell me. This Old Carl lived in London when he was a child. His family was killed by German bombers. He was later adopted by Alan's grandfather. The previous point, when he was young, he worked as a follower with Alan's father. Later, he changed his name and was assigned to open a car repair shop here in the suburbs of Swansea. Point, the suburb where his car repair shop is located is relatively remote. Even if servants of the Hill family come to Swansea, they will not be met. Point, Old Carl has been here for decades, just to monitor some people, get some information, and occasionally help the family with some dirty work. Point, the car repair guys outside him didn't even know who they were working for. They only knew that Old Carl was their boss. These are all old tricks of the big family, and his here is one of the escape routes left by the Hill family. Unexpectedly, the old Earl didn't use it, but Alan did. Point, in this secret room, in addition to storing some loose money, there are also a few foreign property deeds and other things, just in case something big happens to the family and someone takes away their nest. If there are descendants of the Zia family in the manor, they can after escaping. This is a small support den for the comeback point, so these things are not particularly valuable, but they have been slowly saved and hidden by the Hill family from generation to generation. This kind of place. He was too far away from the manor. On his way to escape, he was overtaken by the enemy and killed before he even got there. If it is too close, it will be too easy to be found. If the enemy encircles it. This place is more than 40 kilometers away from Hill Manor. Just right. Further south is the port in the sea, which can be called a one-stop escape route. At that time, it depends on the choice of the survivors, whether to flee overseas with the money or to remain anonymous. But with the development of the times, such old methods have become outdated. Therefore, this place was later changed into the old Count's outer room. This outer room is not used by the Golden House to hide the beauty, but to hide information. Occasionally, the old Earl would come over secretly and tell old Carol something, and he would listen to it, like a personal gramophone. The information he heard were all family secrets that could not be recorded in detail on paper, and the old Earl was temporarily. It's not good to tell your own children first. These secrets may never be used, but they may be used someday. Now that Alan is in charge of the family for the first time, it would definitely be unrealistic for him to sneak over by himself. I can only drop by when I come to Swansea for an appointment this time. And used here once. Consider it useless. The last time the master came here was half a month before his accident. He didn't have any useful information at that time. Old Carol stared at Alan, thinking about it, and began to open the cabinet to find his notebook. Alan glanced at his notebooks and saw that most people would get a headache just by looking at the things written on them. There is a very fucking thing. Wales has its own language, but as of now, less than 30% of the people in Wales can speak Welsh. As for Welsh, how should I put it? The phrases are all big strings of letters connected together, which are smelly and long. Although they are all English letters, they are definitely not the same thing as English. In addition, this is the password made by old Carl himself. The notebook is full of Welsh words and special symbols interspersed with records. Apart from him, I believe that few people in the world can understand this kind of ghost-like thing. The second young master has not mentioned to me any conflicts with outsiders in the past year, so you're going to tell me it was an accident? Huh? Alan's voice became much louder. He still didn't know the specific reason for this incident, but from Hooter's words, he knew that this incident was not an accident at all. Think about it, a veteran Earl and his eldest son were in a car accident at the same time. So quietly. Hooter dared not say anything. It's not that he is disloyal to the family, he just advises Alan to live a good life. But Alan can't do it. Some things can be confused, and some things can't. People can't live ignorantly like a fool, worrying all day long. Even if he dies, he wants to die in a clear way. Alan said a little irritably, it wasn't within the past year. What about before? Think about it carefully. I doubted someone before I came here, but I don't think it was the case. There was no need for him to do that. Alan was suspicious of that person, so there was absolutely no need to kill the old Earl. This was equivalent to cutting off an arm. Moreover, not only the old Earl, but also Alan's eldest brother came here to interrupt a family for 2 generations. It was almost equivalent to annihilating the family. How much hatred would it take to do this? Huh? Second young master, do you think it is? Old Carol seemed to suddenly think of something, and then his face turned pale, and he couldn't even speak clearly. If you haven't invested yet, hurry up. In the last 2 days, the signing will have to be postponed until tomorrow at most. We can't delay it any longer. Chapter 14. The man behind the scenes. Explain. Master, I went on a business trip a few years ago for a long time. Before he left, he didn't tell me anything. But after he came back, he mentioned it to me once by chance. He said that he had done something big. But it seems that the final result was not good, and it was a bit reckless. He said that he took a young man with him and boarded the fleet to participate in the Falklands War with him. Mashima joined the war. Alan was stunned. He felt that he was close to the truth. The young man brought by his father might be the key point. Who? Did he tell you who the person he brought with him was? Alan asked very urgently. The Master said at the time that it seemed to be a young man named Albert. Albert? He didn't tell you his full name. There are so many young people named Albert throughout Great Britain. This thing is just like in the East. Names like Zhang Wei and Li Qiang are so common. The scope is too great. The Master was very vague at the time, but some time ago, last month, he accidentally mentioned it to me. At that time, the Master casually said that Albert got married in July this year. Old Carol's lips were trembling a little, and he continued to speak stumblingly. Second, young Master, the Albert you are talking about is the young man that the Master mentioned, the young man he took to Four Clans. Albert, there are so many coincidences in the world. Alan judged that the two Alberts must be the same person. As for Albert who got married in July, Alan was suddenly stunned. He knew why Carol was so scared. The one named Albert who can make the old count mention him is that he got married in July this year. The young man who can be related to the old count is called Albert. Then the identity of this young man must not be simple. Identity and social circle are kept here. When you think about it this way, the entire range shrinks dramatically. Thinking of this, Alan suddenly thought of a person and blurted out, Andrew Albert Christian Edward. The pale-faced Lorca showed a smile that was uglier than crying and nodded to Alan. He also thought of this person. Hold. Alan was breathing heavily from his nostrils, and he was going crazy. Damn it, I'm just an ordinary nobleman. I thought it was still a ridiculous start, but why is it involved in so many bad things now? Mentioning this Albert alone, he seems not to be well known, but this is only to the outside world. In Alan's previous life, he had never even heard of this name. But now, the person represented by this name is very unusual in Britain. This person is only 26 years old this year, and just got married in July this year. Their family is very powerful. How big is it? Is there any smoke in here? Alan looked at old Carol. Old Carol hurriedly pulled out a pack of cigarette boxes that were somewhat dry outside from the drawer, took out a cigarette, handed it to Alan, and lit it for him carefully. Hiss. The smoke passed through his lungs once, and Alan took another deep breath. Lying on the couch, staring at the dim light bulb on the roof of the dark room. He now combined all the clues he knew, and had almost figured out the general context of the whole thing. Only now did he finally understand why Hooter was so scared. I've replace it with yourself. His favorite son was taken to the battlefield to join the war. He was still in the Navy, and he was still on a battleship. Moreover, in that naval battle, a battleship was actually sunk. This was despite the fact that several British warships were sunk, and dozens of warships were damaged. In this case, would this young man's old mother have any hatred for the person who brought her son to the battlefield? The premise is that in this battle, this young man should not, or is not allowed to participate in the battle. Alan uses himself to save others. If it were him, who would dare to trick his child into going to such a dangerous place and have a few brushes with death, then he would want to kill him. Even tooth for tooth. Let that person experience the same pain for himself. Now the consequences are obvious. This young man's old mother has a bad temper like Ellen, and she has the ability to do things to make herself angry, and what she did was exactly what Alan thought. The person who tricked her son into joining the war had already taken his favorite eldest son in his family to meet God, although this time is a bit late, a full 2 years late. But these 2 years have not eliminated the old mother's hatred for the old earl. This is what is even more terrifying. Moreover, after 2 years, this incident looks more like an accident. Now the matter has also been determined. It was indeed calculated as an accident, and the funeral was handled by the prince himself. How fucking ridiculous. Alan thought that the reason why his father was invited out at that time was to attend the banquet hosted by the prince himself. Thinking of this, Alan couldn't help but stand on his head a little. This is being seduced by the monarch he is loyal to, and sent out to be slaughtered. Who would be prepared in such a situation? Someone who even has to submit to his fucking prince. So fucking scary. Alan even has the urge to run away now. This earl, whoever wants it can want it. If it weren't for the fact that the title couldn't be bought and sold, he would have wanted to sell it and run away with the money. I don't want to play anymore. Dying is too dangerous. He wants to go to America. Old Carl stared at Alan in a daze, watching the two-smoked cigarette in his hand slowly burn out. Waiting for the fire on the end of the cigarette to slowly burn Alan's fingers, Alan sat up suddenly, stared at old Carl and asked, "Tell me, is my dad awesome? I don't believe Andrew doesn't know him. I don't believe Andrew doesn't know what he wants to do. But he clearly knows me dad is from his brother's side, and they all know each other, so why would he go? And how did he make Andrew willingly follow him to such a dangerous place?" After asking several questions in a row about him and his, Alan asked old Cole with a confused look on his face, "How could a servant like him know this kind of thing?" Second, "Young master, I don't know." Waste. Alan was a little angry now. Different world. Alan hated this feeling point like a big hand falling from the sky. It could easily grab his neck and slowly strangle him to death. And he can't resist. No. Alan grabbed the cigarette on the table and lit another one. He wandered a few steps and looked down at old Carol. "I'm from another world. Different world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 15. Second Young Master. I won't leave. Alan was serving overseas at the time. Compared to the old Earl, the environment he was in was the most dangerous. There are strong winds and waves everywhere on the sea, and the chance of accidents is really high, and it is very common for someone to die. But he happened to be very safe. He was even able to go through the discharge procedures smoothly and return to Great Britain safely. If someone wanted to kill him during this period, Alan's own deduction alone would have dozens of opportunities to make him disappear without anyone noticing. But none of these points, so it certainly can't be attributed to luck, nor is it some blessing from God. Rather, damn it, Alan figured it out. If someone takes the old lady's favorite son to walk around the god of death, and that person ends up taking his most beloved son to see God, what a fair and just counterattack means and result. That was it, because he had not been favored since he was a child, that he escaped disaster in the end. How fucking ironic. Should I be lucky that since time travel, I'm not familiar with this place? He can't even speak English smoothly, so he tries to keep a low profile and just wants to be a waste with peace of mind. As a result, he behaves mediocrely, so he is not favored by the Earl pet. So in the end he was saved from getting into a car accident. Alan's face turned red. Scholars can be killed but not humiliated. You can kill me, but you can't look down on me. Now, this old woman is just fucking looking down on people. Alan's father is called Carno Hill, but few people usually call him by his name directly. They usually call him the Earl of Carmarthen, or the old Earl. Alan's mood is very complicated now. Since he came back, he has not visited the old Earl's grave once, but at this moment, Alan suddenly wanted to take a look at the old Earl's grave. And by the way, he said to him, "Carno Hill, you are really awesome." Alan still remembers that the old Earl told him during dinner that the family needs to deepen its relationship with the royal family. Or rather with His Highness the Prince. But limited to the poor political talent of the old Earl. It was only now that Alan realized what he meant by deepening the relationship. Alan doesn't know whether His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is in a hurry or not, and he doesn't want to guess, but the old Earl could take the initiative to approach Prince Andrew and even trick him into joining the war. This thing seems extremely weird. Without the secret instruction of others, the old count would not be able to do such a thing. Now, with all the clues connected, it is clear who was behind the old Earl's back. The old Earl is indeed a member of the Hill family who is loyal to His Royal Highness the Prince. Alan couldn't figure out why he took Andrew to join the war, but it was most likely due to His Highness's instruction. Is it a conflict between brothers? But take him directly to fight. Do you want to cause an accident? You really dared to take on the task His Highness gave you. The key is, He finally accomplished it. Alan believed that Charles could not have imagined that the old earl would do such a thing. Taking the queen's favorite little prince with her. She went to war, still on the front line. And these two guys actually came back safe and sound in the end. Looking back at the results now, Andrew was fine, but Charles lost an earl. This family, if you have the courage in time, why don't you just rebel? Oh shit. Do you want to kill your young son, create an accident, and make the old mother angry to death, so that the prince can realize his dream naturally? Theoretically speaking, the Hill family has had the ability to follow the dragon from generation to generation, but in the generation of the old earl, it no longer exists. But damn, if you no longer have the power to follow the dragon, why do you have to create it artificially? In the end, it didn't happen, and I got involved. Damn, it's so complicated. You guys are going to heaven. No wonder the guy who endured it for 2 years couldn't hold it back in the end. Now the old count is doing well. His departure should be painless. Huth said that the person was crushed on the spot. This is a pain for Alan himself. Now the prince personally led out his confidant general and gave it to the old lady to slaughter so that she could vent her anger, and the anger should have disappeared. Therefore, the old earl's funeral affairs were personally presided over by the prince, and the process was completed quickly, without even waiting for his youngest son to come back. The procedures for Alan's title succession were also personally issued by His Highness the Prince. Is this a stick and a sweet date? The car accident happened because the old count did something he shouldn't have done, and even the heir was sent away. Alan was kept because the old earl's starting point was loyalty. Therefore, his waste son was left to succeed the throne, and the family was not cut off. It's this stick that's so scary. In the blink of an eye, 2 people were gone from the family, and these were nobles, a titled earl with a fiefdom, who said that the British nobles had no power. Alan was worried about him. Nobles are not decorations. It's just that ordinary people don't understand them and can't get in touch with them. As it is now, the old count is dead. As light as a feather and silent. Even if some people may be able to guess it, they dare not say it. Carol, master, I'm here. Alan calmed down and realized that all this was deduced by himself, based on all the current clues. As for whether it was accurate or not, he didn't dare to bet. But, after meeting His Highness the Prince, and looking at his attitude towards me, everything will be clear. There are still 2 days left. Now, Alan wasn't sure if anyone was watching him outside, but old Cole was definitely out of use here. This old Carl, no matter what his abilities are, he has stayed here for so long for the family, and has not complained for decades. Alan cannot ignore such a person. There is no need to exist here anymore. After I leave, you destroy these things overnight. Alan pointed to these things locked in the iron box. These secrets, it may be important, but as long as the Carrolls are still alive, nothing else matters now. Take the property you have here and go. Alan thought for a while and couldn't think of where to arrange for Carol to go. Where is that little abode? Alan is asking about the real estate information that exists here. Hearing Alan's inquiry, old Carol said without even thinking, in Los Angeles, America. So far away. Alan briefly recalled the map of the United States. Los Angeles. This is all the way to the west coast of the United States, thousands of miles away from Great Britain. It is indeed a place prepared for escape, so be careful. Alan pondered for a moment and said, then go to Los Angeles. See who you want to take with you. Take a few trustworthy people with you. Once you are settled, you can contact your family. Second, young master, what should you do? All the names are known, and Alan can guess the general outline of the matter. Although old Carl doesn't know as much detail as Alan does, he can probably guess the truth of the matter. It was only after he guessed the truth that he could better understand the danger involved. At this juncture, the second young master actually asked him to run for his life first. Carol. Alan glanced at Carol and said, in the eyes of big people, you are like a little bug. Even if you run away, no one will care about you. And I can't run away. Even if I want to run away, where can I go? Second young master, you currently lack manpower, so I can't leave. What can you do to help me? Go ahead and bring some people over there. Wait for you to settle down. Wait a month before contacting your family. If you can't be contacted by then, you can spend the rest of your life peacefully retiring in the United States. Chapter 16 Keeping an Appointment. Old Carroll opened his mouth, and he looked quietly at the slightly younger second young master in front of him. He had been away from home for many years, and had not had much contact with the second young master at home. The old earl rarely talked about the second young master in front of him before. His previous impression of the second young master was that he was mediocre, had no ambitions, and looked like a prodigal. But at this moment, the second young master suddenly gave him a very strange feeling. This second young master of the Hill family was different from all other members of the Hill family. When danger approached, he would actually let a servant of the family run for his life first. Is this still a noble? Is this still the style of the Hill family, the resolute border earl family? Old Carroll looked at Alan's eyes that made people dare not question. His throat moved and said, "I know the second young master. I will arrange a place to live, and I will contact my family again today in a month." Returning to the ground from the dark room, watching old Carl move the bookcase, and closing the secret passage again, Alan took a look at old Carl's office. It was messy, and looked like that. It was a somewhat unkempt office of a car repair shop owner. The way it should be. "Master, do you want to go back to the hotel now?" Old Carl's name for Alan has gone from subconsciously emphasizing Alan's ranking to now calling him young master naturally. It's just one word difference. Even he didn't feel the feeling in it. "No. Rush. Prepare something for me. Is there any good stuff that can be related to the Fox family? It's best if it comes from a local gang, and it's best if it has a mark." Watching Alan make an 8 gesture with his right hand. Old Carroll understood instantly, thought for a moment and said, "There really aren't any items that can be related to the Fox family, but there aren't many items that are related to the local gangs. There are 7 short ones and only 2 long ones. I don't know if they will be enough." "Not enough. That's enough. Send it to my car. I'll leave first. You hurry up and pack it up. I can stay in Swansea for one night, so you can leave tonight. Clear?" Old Carroll lowered his head and watched Alan open the small iron door of the office and go out. "Master, what are they moving?" Zaro Chitao stayed in the driver's seat obediently, looking in the rear view mirror at Alan Rode, who was resting with his eyes closed in the back seat of the car. He was a little curious today. The young master brought him to this place and asked them to stay in the car and not ask any more questions. "Let's go back to the hotel." Alan heard the muffled sound of the car trunk being closed and saw old Carl making a very subtle OK gesture towards him. Old John's Crazy City is located in the east of Swansea. The overall decoration style is a bit like the old-fashioned KTVs in remote suburbs of 5th and 6th tier cities in China during the era when Alan lived. The Roman columns at the door look very impressive. But from the perspective of someone who has been there, it feels like this thing has a strong rustic feel to it. The interior is decorated in an extremely old style, with wood-colored imitation wood grain patches, red furry wallpaper on the walls, and some fake oil paintings hung every few steps in the lobby on the first floor. There is a service desk as soon as you enter the door. You have to bypass the service desk in the main hall, and inside is the lobby on the first floor, with a large dance floor in the middle. On the second floor and above, there are private rooms of different sizes. It's past 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and old John's Crazy City, which used to be very lively, is quiet today. 4 yellow-skinned Asian-looking bodyguards stood at the door with alert faces, and were on full alert. In the largest box on the second floor, there is a large old-fashioned TV, and next to it is a video recorder. This thing is for playing videotapes. It does not support song requests, so you can sing whatever you want. An old man with white hair and a hooked nose, who looked a bit like a vulture, was sitting on a large purple sofa with his legs crossed, and he was absent-mindedly listening to the chatter of the round-faced young man next to him. "Steward, Netsri, you ask me. Can the young earl agree to the price we offer?" "What Jinsei Yang is holding is the real estate project he is going to discuss with Alan this time. It is this price. It is really too low, so low that even capitalists shed tears after seeing it." "What? A little earl? He hasn't officially inherited the title. At best, he is just a knight now. He can't keep the wealth of the Hill family. Instead of being sold off by that prodigal son, it's better to take it out and make a project together. This is just because our master takes care of the younger generation, because of the old friendship between the two families. Nesri, the old butler of the Fox family, was also one of the people who accompanied Jin Zaeyang to see Alan this time. From what he said, it was as if the Fox family and the Hill family were family friends, and what Viscount Fox was doing now was just to help the younger generation out of kindness. Hiss. Nesri smiled and nodded to the Korean woman who lit the cigarette for him and touched a handful of her hands, but it's only limited to touching a handful. His current body functions are beyond his ability to do other things. The Korean woman wore heavy makeup and smiled ingratiatingly towards Nesri. Bang. Bang bang. Come in, Jin. Zaeyang looked at his bodyguards pushing the door open and asked with confusion, "What's wrong, boss?" When the guests arrived, didn't you specifically tell you that they should tell you in advance? Okay, I get it, butler. Nesri, do we need to go greet him? No need. You guys will talk for a while, and you will act based on my look. Due to some information gaps, Nesri's impression of Alan was limited to the description of the eldest daughter in the family a few years ago. Even though he knew that the second young master had gone to serve in the military a few years ago, he did not take him seriously. Get out of the way. We are the police providing protection for the Earl's trip. Rex is a strong white man, about 30 years old, with a stubble on his face and looks extremely fierce. At this time, Rex was wearing the traditional black police uniform of the British police, especially the big brimmed hat on his head, which was very funny. The hat had narrow brim at the front and back. On the round hat, a police badge occupied the front. He raised his whole head and looked at the few Koreans blocking the road at the entrance of Old John's crazy city. He pushed one of them away fiercely, reached into his pocket, took out his ID, and casually gestured to a few of them one time. Alan looked at their posture and sneered. He came to the appointment, but there was no one to receive him. Very arrogant and domineering. Go in. The little stone next to him was acting as Alan's assistant at this time. He was holding two boxes, one large and one small, including a very long suitcase. Standing sideways in front of Alan. Following them were the 4 domestic servants and bodyguards brought from home. Alan brought a total of 4 policemen and 4 bodyguards with him on this trip, plus him and Zhao Shitao, a total of 10 people. Chapter 17. You know too much, Your Mightiness. Rex moved closer to Alan, lowered his head, and looked at Alan expectantly. When I go in later, the 4 of you will take my bodyguards and take down all of them. Can you do that? Alan put his hands behind his back, curled his lips slightly, and slowly explained the matter while looking at this sparsely decorated so-called crazy city with great disdain. In a remote place like Wales, and in this day and age, don't expect this kind of entertainment venue to be so high-end. Yes, sir. Don't worry, no one can escape. Rex patted his waist and made a clang sound. This time they came to protect Alan. The 4 policemen brought a total of 30 pairs of handcuffs, although I don't know why there are so many handcuffs. This is what the Earl personally told me, and he must carry it out. HMPH. After arresting the person, go to the private room and find me. Don't screw it up. Yes. Yes. Don't worry, sir. The door of the private room was gently pushed open. As the door opened, the conversation of the people inside was interrupted. Alan appeared at the door of the private room expressionlessly, looking at the 3 people in the private room, 2 men and 1 woman. He still has some impression of that old man. He seems to be from the Fox family. Did I disturb your conversation? Sorry, I knocked on the door. Maybe you didn't hear me. Ahem. Hearing Alan's words, the old man coughed twice, stood up awkwardly, pretended to adjust his shirt, looked directly at Alan and said, "Alan Hill, I didn't expect you to grow taller now. I'll go up. The first time I saw you, you were so tall." As he spoke, he made a gesture on his chest with his hand. Eugene Zaeyang. Alan didn't even look at the old man, who thought he was very humorous, but fixed his eyes on another man. He has a big face and slightly squinted eyes, which makes him look a bit vulgar. "It's me, Mr. Allen. Hello. I'm Jin Zaeyang." No matter what Butler Nesri said, Jin Zaeyang admitted that the moment he saw Alan, he still gave in instinctively. He lowered his head and bowed to Alan, stretched out his hand and asked Alan to sit down. Did you bring the project book? Please. Take a look. Jin Zaiyang bent down, picked up the plan with both hands, and handed it to Alan. After taking the plan, Alan put it on the coffee table in front of the sofa, reached for an ashtray, pressed it on the plan, and said, "Don't rush to read the plan. I'm a person who likes to make friends very much. Mr. Jin, we can chat first and get to know each other better, which will also facilitate our future cooperation." "Yes, yes. Your Excellency," said yes. A look of surprise appeared on Jin Zaiyang's face. This Alan Hill was indeed a prodigal son, as Nesri's butler said. "You didn't even read the plan, but you actually wanted to chat first. If you have anything to talk about, just take out your land and give it to us." But although he thought so, he did not dare to say so directly. After all, the place where his feet were now was Great Britain, not the Republic of Korea. "Sir Alan, I have admired you for a long time and have heard of your deeds many times. This is a meeting gift from me to you. Please accept it." As Jin Zaiyang spoke, he reached out and hooked his fingers, calling the Korean woman with heavy makeup to come over. "This is Miss Park Jin-an. She is well known even in our country. She is good at singing and dancing. I'm sure you will like her." Alan was slightly stunned by Jin Zaiyang's routine. He was going to give a big life to him. That's quite a feat. The young man is very understanding of people and the world. It's just that the quality of this gift is a bit unflattering. These days, plastic surgery technology in Korea is probably not yet mature, but the Miss Park in front of me looks a bit authentic. If her appearance can be described in easy to understand terms, she is the type that can help men quit sex. Seeing Alan looking towards her, Park Jin-an was distracted for a moment. The appearance of this big shot and the boss's words is so unforgettable, especially his eyes, which are cold and a little ruthless but also a little seductive. The overall facial features are very straight and masculine, with short blonde hair and fair skin. Seeing this, Park Jin-an resisted the urge to continue reading, lowered her head shyly, and wrung her hands in front of her. Dare not look at Alan anymore. Park Jin-an's performance gave Alan goosebumps on his back. He suppressed his nausea, twitched the corners of his mouth, and redirected the topic towards mutual understanding. "I heard that Mr. Jin's Jin Group is developing very well in our country and has several industries. Can you give me a brief introduction? I would like to know more about our partners." Although the information given by Butler Hute has revealed the details of the Jin Group in great detail, Alan is more cautious. He now treats Jin Zaiyang as a fat sheep, and now that he has finally met the real owner, he still wants to inspect the goods first and make some lies. After all, it is all money. Jin Zaiyang looked at Alan strangely. This foreigner didn't seem to be interested in their Korean beauty. On the contrary, Jin Zaiyang felt from Alan's eyes that the Lord Alan in front of him seemed to have very hot eyes when he looked at him. Could it be that this person had a problem with his orientation? After swallowing, Jin Zaiyang answered questions and answers to Alan honestly and talked about the situation of his family group. As for what Nesri Butler said before, he would act based on his looks. The housekeeper was sitting next to him in embarrassment and couldn't even say anything. What else was he looking at? "Stone. Get my little box." "Yes, master." Shitao placed a small black leather suitcase on the coffee table in front of Alan and thoughtfully opened the suitcase to face him. Due to the angle, Jin Zaiyang and housekeeper Nesri, who were sitting opposite Alan, could not see the contents of the opened box. Park Jin-an, who was standing next to him, could see a little bit, but he could not see the contents. Not sure. Alan slowly took out a pair of white gloves from the box. Alan put on very ordinary white gloves on his hands. After putting on the gloves, he used the facade of the box to cover them, picked up the magazine and inserted bullets, 1 or 2. Load 5 bullets, and pick up the Soviet-made TT-33 pistol placed alone in the box. This thing was once produced in large quantities, but has now been eliminated, so it has flowed into the black market in large quantities, and been obtained by many gangs from various channels. This is something that old Carl prepared for Alan. "Can Miss Park understand English?" Alan asked, looking at Park Jin-an with a charming smile on his face. "Can Park?" Jin-an's voice was quite pleasant. When Alan asked, she shyly replied in English with a strange accent. "Very good." Since you can understand, you know too much. Bang, bang, bang. Chapter 18 Calling a deer a horse. Pooh. Jillian's eyes widened in disbelief. She tried hard to lower her head, but she could no longer feel any strength in her body. There was a pop, and he looked at Park Jin-ayan, who was shot 3 times and collapsed on the ground. Jin Zae-young was shocked by this scene. Just now we were chatting in a peaceful atmosphere, and in the blink of an eye, the person died. What are you doing, Nesriz? Horrified shouts came to his ears, and Jin Zae-young came back to his senses. He looked at Alan with some fear in his eyes and said, "Sir Alan, what's going on? Someone's here. Someone's here." He wanted to call the bodyguard outside the door, but there was no response from the door. TSK. Alan did not look at Jin Zae-young, but tilted his head and looked at Nesri and said, "Are you from the Fox family? What is your name?" "I am Viscount Fox's butler." "Alan, don't mess around, butler." Nesri's legs were now weak from fear, and his right hand was trembling a little. Alan's sudden violence made him a little overwhelmed. He instinctively moved out the background behind him, hoping that Alan would have some scruples. Boom. Nesri was shot in the thigh, covering his thigh with both hands, lying on his back on the sofa, and twitching in pain. "Just say whatever you ask me. Where does this nonsense come from?" Alan sneered. A good-for-nothing butler dared to pretend to be cool in front of him. Looking at the crazy Alan, Jin Zae-young was frightened. He had never encountered such a situation before. This was the butler of the Fox family. In his eyes, this is already a big shot, but this does not affect the Lord Alan in front of him from taking action. There was a brief silence, and the only sound left in the private room was Nesra's wailing. Bang. Bang bang. 3 knocks on the door finally broke the atmosphere. As soon as the hope in Jin Zae-young's eyes was ignited, the door to the private room was opened. Rex looked in, and his pupils suddenly expanded. He was also a little confused by the scene in front of him. It was so miserable. An old man was lying on the sofa wailing, and another Korean man was sitting on the sofa with a pale face. There was also a woman lying on the ground, and the blood under her body had already stained the carpet. Your Excellency, everything outside has been taken care of. Police. Police. He killed someone. Help me. Help me. You came just in time. Come here and hold him down." The voices of Alan and Jin Zae-young sounded at the same time. Halfway through, Alan looked back at Jin Zae-young. Jin Zae-young looked at the British policeman at the door with a somewhat desperate look, and then at Alan. "Are these 2 people together? Give me your hat with only 5 rounds in the pistol and 1 left." Alan asked Rex to give him his ridiculous hat, held Rex's hat in his left hand, and fired a shot into the hat. He threw Rex's hat on the ground, and looked at Jin Zae-young, who was holding his shoulders by Rex. "Your Excellency, don't kill me. I can give you anything. Money, industry. I'll give it all to you." Jin Zae-young said tremblingly, "Haha. Aren't these things of yours originally mine? Do you have other industries? You didn't mention them just now." Jin Zae-young was completely confused. It turned out that Alan just said he liked to make friends in order to increase understanding between partners, just to find out more about his industry. This still a noble? Isn't this a robber? You will get nothing if you kill me. HMPH. Stop guessing. Come on, Rex. Hold his hand. With a smile on his face, Alan took out the empty magazine and forced the pistol without magazine into Jin Zae-young's hand. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Butler Nesri. "Save me. Keep him quiet." Alan looked at Jin Zae-young, who was yelling, frowned slightly, and was a little disgusted. "Damn, the little stick is not very brave. Why can't he be as good as an old man? Look at the housekeeper Nesri next to him. He is only scared now, and doesn't dare to yelling." Rex grabbed Jin Zae-young's hair, pulled his hair hard with his hands, and pulled it back. When Jin Zae-young exposed his neck, he punched him in the throat. Cough. Cough cough cough. "Your Excellency, he is quiet." Alan worked extremely carefully. After covering the pistol with Jin Zae-young's fingerprints, he held the remaining 4 bullets in the suitcase, and repeated the same action. After the bullets were stained with fingerprints, he finally removed the remaining bullets. He pressed 4 bullets into the magazine, took out a transparent evidence bag, opened the safety, put the pistol away, wiped the entire suitcase clean with gloves, and then looked up at Rex. "I will give you the details of his assets in Daying. At that time, you will be responsible for selling off his fixed assets and giving me the final funds. 10% of them will be your reward. In the meantime, you can continue to ask him if he has any hidden assets." Jin Zayang's body began to tremble unconsciously when he heard that Alan actually started to distribute his property in front of him. "Thank you for your cultivation. I will do a good job. I guarantee that he will not even think of hiding a penny." Rex looked surprised. Before coming, His Excellency the Earl had already briefly told him that this was a property worth more than £1 million. 10% is hundreds of thousands of pounds. Seeing Alan getting up, as if ready to leave, Rex asked hurriedly, "Sir, what should we do here, and what should we do with those bodyguards?" Alan paused, turned around, pointed to the small suitcase on the table with a smile, and said, "Isn't this evidence? I've taken care of it. It's been at the junction of Carmarthen and Swansea for a long time. The Khan Group, a vicious force in South Korea, deliberately committed a murderous attack on me during an appointment with the Fox family's housekeeper, suspected of assassination. As for those bodyguards, I remember that we have several unsolved cases in Carmarthenshire for many years. Let them take over. From next month, you will be Detective Rex. Those who cannot be used, can be locked up first. I'll use it slowly from now on." "Yes, Your Excellency." Rex lowered his head, not daring to look at Alan anymore. He was a little frightened, but more of a surprise. Although Lord Alan's methods are a bit cruel, he has finally climbed to the top of the Hill family this time. Just this time, he will have to struggle for at least 10 years less than his colleagues around him. "What's this?" "This is your noble person, as expected of a veteran nobleman." After Alan explained these things, he turned around and came to Nesri's housekeeper. Nesri was lying on the sofa with his eyes closed. He didn't know whether he fainted from the pain or was just pretending. Alan picked up Nesri's cane next to him and stabbed the wound on Nesri's thigh hard with the cane. "Ah, Nesri!" screamed. Alan looked at his miserable state and sneered. "Go back and tell that old guy Fox that I won't care about him this time because of his old age. Give me a gift within a week. Come here with £500,000. I don't care whether you borrow it or rob it. If I don't receive the money within a week, let him wait at this year's parliament. I'm still young, and if I take action, it will be much heavier than my father. Thank you all for the rewards. I really can't thank you enough. I feel embarrassed if I don't update." Chapter 19 Results. Nesri wailed and hugged his thighs, not even daring to look at Alan. This second young master of the Hill family, who was rumored to have nothing but good looks, met him today. This was the third sentence Alan said to him, but the sharp pain in his thigh reminded Nesri that this was obviously not some dandy and prodigal son who knew nothing about bullshit. This is a real wolf. What kind of person would ask the target's property status in person and in a pleasant manner before taking action? It's the second young master of the Hill family in front of him, Alan Hill. He switches between the two roles of being pleasant and violent and murderous so smoothly. Faced with such a lunatic, Nesri felt that every time he spoke now, he would bring more risks to his life and safety. Having been a butler in the Fox family for decades, he has also seen big storms. Today, the waves were too big and the boat capsized. In the current situation, you can't say anything harsh. Pretending to be deaf and dumb and honestly giving in are the only rules to save your life. As for Jin Zayang next to him, who is Jin Zayang? I don't know him. Nesri. Bang. Bang bang. The knock on the door came again at an inappropriate time, and Alan, who happened to walk to the door, opened the door smoothly. A relatively lean white man looked in and saw Alan standing in the private room, opening the door for him. Your Excellency. He knew Alan, and he couldn't help but feel a little flattered when he saw this adult opening the door for him in person. He wanted to say something, but didn't know how to say it. As a native of Carmarthenshire, he may not care about people in London or other leaders above, but he must still maintain absolute respect for the Hill family, the absolute overlord of Carmarthen. This family has ruled the entire Carmarthenshire for hundreds of years. Over the past few hundred years, the Hill family has not been a vegetarian. They have always been the lords military and political leaders of the entire Carmarthenshire, but now times have changed, and such rights have been taken back, but the power is gone, but the influence is still there. They even now have the right to monitor the entire Carmarthenshire area. Otherwise, why would Rex be so obedient? He clings to the top local nobles. He just wants to live a better life. What's wrong with him? Haha. Are you here to see Rex? Come in, Alan. Turned sideways, glanced at Rex again and said, I'll leave the rest to you. Do your best. I'll leave first. Yes, sir. Don't worry, Rex will not let you down. When little shithouse saw Alan leaving the room, he pointed to Rex the long box he left on the ground and said, here are the remaining incriminating evidences. There are a few short ones and 2 long ones inside, understand? Seeing the 2 men finally leaving the private room, the lean man who looked nervous just now finally breathed a sigh of relief. This scene, coupled with the aura of the legendary Earl, made him dare not speak. He cautiously approached Rex and said, boss, those Koreans outside have been taken care of. Here, this old man, do you need to send him to the hospital? What? A waste. Our police station is very well funded. Call back quickly and call for a car or someone. Then you can make a special trip and leave him at the gate of Viscount Fox's manor. Rex held down Jin Zaeyong, who was still retching with his right hand. He raised his wrist with his left hand and looked at the time. It was 7:35. From the time Mr. Allen entered the room until he left, it took less than half of the time. Hours, neat and tidy. Fortunately, the venue was booked by this stupid Korean, so it was easier for them to move around. There were still about 10 hours until dawn, so they had enough time to do anything. After taking photos of the scene in a while, as long as we clean up the place before dawn, and before the local Swansea police discover it, and push the people back, the rest will be easy to talk about. The worst case scenario is that after a while, a Korean bodyguard can be sent to the Swansea police as a favor. He took out the handcuffs, and clasped Jin Zaeyong's hands behind his back, and Rex told his men to do the work. Just what he gained from following Mr. Allen today made his mouth water. This is the strength of Carmarthenshire's overlord family. This time, Mr. Allen assigned him a task, and he will complete it as quickly as possible. As for the handling of Jin Zaeyong's fixed assets, there are professionals to help with it. As long as you give him the money, all of this will not be a problem. As for hiding it from Alan and secretly coveting more money, Rex couldn't even think of such an idea. One is that I really don't dare, and the other is Mr. Allen has been very kind and gave 10% of the share as a reward. People can't be too greedy. This is hundreds of thousands of pounds. With his current salary, if he is asked to save for 10 years, he will not be able to save this amount of money. This is a huge sum of money for him. He, Rex, is a good policeman with a positive attitude. This time I followed Mr. Allen, and I got the credit. Monetary rewards are coming soon. All that remains is to complete the tasks assigned by Your Excellency beautifully, and serve the Hill family well from now on. When he retires, will Sir Allen reward him with a medal in recognition of his years of hard work. By then, he, Sheriff Rex, can also become a jazz master. This kind of life has surpassed more than 95% of British people. Looking at Jin Zaeyong, who was pressed on the coffee table, Rex's eyes were cold. This stupid Korean, limited by his poor knowledge, actually wanted to take advantage of Mr. Allen. Since ancient times, how can there be any reason for a fat man to take the initiative, to find a wolf, to take advantage of it? From the moment he sent the invitation letter to Mr. Allen, his life has officially entered the countdown. All that is left is to wait peacefully for Mr. Allen to come to see him, inspect the goods, and then be skinned and marrowed, and eaten clean. Not even bones or residue left. Allen returned to the hotel and took a hasty hot shower. Swansea, it's not a big place, and its current overall size can't even keep up with the 4th and 5th tier cities in the world where he lived in later generations. Here, the best hotels are only 3-star. He dislikes that the bathtub and the bathroom is too dirty, and there is no servant to serve him, so he can only take a short shower sitting at the tea seat by the window, looking at the dim path downstairs. Alan picked up the manuscript paper provided by the hotel, frowned and began to think about tomorrow. Summoned by the monarch. This is no joke. Although the Hill family is known as the prince's confidant, Alan and Charles are not familiar with each other. In the middle, the most important step of handover of personal connections is missing point in the past. My father's focus was on his eldest brother, and it was not his turn point as a result. He now doesn't know how to deal with tomorrow's meeting point. As for this little incident that happened tonight in old John's crazy city point, Alan admitted that his methods were slightly violent, but chapter 20 meeting. But aren't these very commonplace? People are coming to seize his property, so we can't let him stretch his neck to be slaughtered, right? These days, there's not even a surveillance video on the internet, so what's inconvenient to do? He really killed the chicken to scare the monkey, and the two people immediately became obedient, which shows the power of this move. As for Nesri, there is no need to kill him. It would be better to let him go. Point as for whether he will go out and talk nonsense after he returns, that old fellow, Viscount Fox, would not be so stupid. Alan made it clear at that time that it was Jinzaeyon who attacked him and Nesri, and nobles all want face. Alan shot Nesri, which was a clear shot at the dog. Point I believe that old guy from Fox was frightened this time and didn't dare to talk nonsense. As for the rest, the £500,000 that Alan asked for, this is our old British tradition. If we win, we will cede territory and pay compensation. Isn't this just unnatural? Alan just blackmails casually. It doesn't matter whether the Fox family gives money or not. If Alan is given more money on hand, there will be less pressure to pay inheritance taxes. Don't give, haha, that would be more fun. He would have a reason. After he has dealt with this big mess at home, it will be easier for him to take the initiative to cause trouble for the Fox family next time. In a simple sentence, it doesn't matter whether they give or not. How wonderful. After resting in the hotel for a night, Alan got up early the next morning. The accommodation here was so bad that he didn't get a good rest last night. Zio Shitao's eyes even turned a little bloodshot when he looked at his young master. Master, please have a good rest. We will arrive at His Highness's manor in about 3 hours. Well, be safe and call me when you get there. London, as a whole, in a broad sense, should be regarded as a very large urban agglomeration. Not only are there distinctions between inner and outer London, but the main functions of each region are also different. But the only thing they have in common is that the environment is not good and dirty. As for the Prince of Wales, in addition to the several long-standing and relatively famous manors known to the outside world, he also has several very private small manors. These places are where he usually reunites with his family or goes on dates with his lover, and the location where the monarch is summoned today. This small manor is in the western suburbs of London, and it's not even a place in London. Master, we are here. Butler Capel is coming this way. The small stone gently pushed up Alan, who was sleeping in the back seat. Well, Alan slowly opened his eyes, having sat and slept for a long time. Now that he came back to his senses, he only felt soreness all over his back. He turned on the reading light, pulled down the small mirror, and slightly arranged his hairstyle. Butler Capel made it very clear in the invitation letter that today's summons was in the nature of a family dinner and not particularly formal. According to such a request, Alan's outfit today is more casual. After sorting out the wrinkles on his shirt a little, Alan turned his head and saw Butler Capel already standing outside the car and opened the rear door for him. A special test has begun, Sir Capel. I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? Haha. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Allen. Your Highness specially made time to summon you today and asked me to wait for you here early. Alan put his right hand on Capel's left arm that was stretched out to support him. When he got out of the car, he politely asked Capel about the physical condition of the housekeeper, the prince's butler. He is also a knight, not the lowest kind of knight. After he retires, he may be able to raise his title to a higher level. Hearing Capel's specially emphasized words, Alan blinked and said, you know, the road from Carmarthen to London is a bit bad. The Empire's finances are controlled by those politicians. Even the most basic roads are not well maintained. Ha ha ha. As long as you can arrive safely, Mr. Allen, His Highness asked me to take you to see him. As soon as you arrive, we will talk as we walk. Capel has a very thin figure, but his simple appearance has a strong academic atmosphere, and his overall temperament is very good. When talking to Alan, his back is straight. Okay, then I'll ask Sir to lead the way for me. This is what I should do, Your Excellency. Please, Alan, I haven't seen you for a long time. I remember the last time I saw you was at my 30th birthday party. Charles was sitting on a large American-style sofa, dressed in casual home clothes and a small vest over his shirt. When he saw Alan being brought over by Capel, he asked a little doubtfully. Alan didn't know how to complain. When Charles celebrated his 30th birthday, it was already 8 years ago. He hadn't traveled through time yet at that time, and these memories were almost blurry to him. Your Highness, you have such a good memory. After so many years, you are still the same as before. Time has not added any hardship to you. Ha ha ha. Sit down. Listening to Alan's praise, Charles rarely smiled happily. Alan took off his coat smoothly, handed it to butler Capel, walked straight to the sofa next to Charles, and sat down gently. Looking at Charles, waiting for him to speak. I am also very sad about your father. Cano has always been my most loyal subject, and the honor of the Hill family has not been insulted by him. Alan stared at Charles, whose expression remained unchanged, and was too lazy to complain. At this moment, Alan wanted to shout, "Your Highness, how about we rebel?" The minister took 30 servants and marched out of Carmarthen and headed east. When the time comes, horses will trample Buckingham, drink the Thames, and capture the old witch alive. This is the right way, not like now. What the hell is the use of doing all this nonsense? Alan is really scared now. He is afraid that Charles will come up with some tricks and let him execute them in the end. Your Highness, the Hill family will always be loyal to the Empire and to you. Charles reached out from a large box on the tea table, picked up a low-key looking document bag, handed it to Alan and said, "This is your title inheritance procedure." Alan pursed his lips, took the document bag with both hands, and slowly opened the bag under Charles' gaze. This thing. It was the procedure for inheriting the title that he had been thinking about these days. If it weren't for it, Alan would have run away long ago. It is this, the title known as the out-of-print limited edition status. In this world, it is the confidence that he can succeed in the future. With it, he will no longer be an ordinary person from now on. With it, his status as an earl can be considered reasonable and legal. With it, from now on, it will be more convenient to do things, whether in the UK or in many places abroad. This is privilege. This is a title. This is nobility. Chapter 21 Undercurrent. The material used to record the title succession procedure was not ordinary paper, but something that felt similar to parchment. Anyway, Alan couldn't tell what kind of material it was for a while. Seeing the edict above, as well as the history of the Hill family and a brief introduction to Alan's life, the long record is extremely detailed. Until the end, Alan saw the seal and signature that symbolized Britain's highest authority, and felt slightly relieved. This inheritance document must be confirmed and signed by the Queen herself. Now this can prove that Alan is temporarily safe in a short period of time. Okay, my Earl of Carmarthen, in this box is your dress. Open it and take a look. Charles watched Alan carefully look through the inheritance documents, and did not laugh at him. The new Earl of the Hill family was still young, and was just curious for a moment. What's so nice about a dress? Alan came back to his senses, put away the procedures, and looked at Charles with some doubts. He pressed the box pointed by Charles with both hands, moved it slightly in front of him, and slowly opened the box. What he saw was a very ordinary item. British aristocratic dress, to be precise. It's not a dress, but a set of exclusive jackets that represent status. This kind of coat has strict regulations depending on the title. It's a bit like officials in ancient China. There are rules for what grade an official should be, what color clothes he should wear, and what kind of spiritual beasts should be embroidered on his chest. In Great Britain, the distinction between titles is mostly due to the number of ermines worn on the hat. But now that Alan saw the coat, he was slightly stunned. This it seems a little different from the old one I saw before. This is after carefully looking at the details. Alan raised his head and looked at Charles and said, "Your Highness, did you give it to the wrong person? This belongs to the Marquis." "Well, it does belong to the Marquis, but it is also for you, Your Highness. This is not in line with etiquette." Ha ha ha. My Earl of Carmarthen, this is indeed not in line with etiquette, but I specially applied for you, and it makes sense. Although I don't know whether Alan knows the truth here. Charles himself is very aware of the inside story point. There should be some comfort, or else, how can we lead the team in the future if the hearts of the people are gone, let alone the only remaining heir of the loyal Hill family? Even if Alan doesn't know it now, what if he knows it later? Charles laughed, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared and became serious. Before Alan could speak, he said, "Alan, the clear sunshine always appears after a heavy rain. We are now in a do you understand the night before the rain stops?" Alan felt like his nose was sore. Do I understand? I understand it so well. Big brother, stop drawing cakes for me here. I'm full of the cakes you drew. I don't want to get involved in your affairs or your family's affairs. The night before it stopped raining. Alan thought about it for a while and counted the time. I'm afraid this person doesn't know that this rain will not stop for 30 or 40 years. The sunshine that Charles is looking forward to may not come for a while. Wrong. Thinking of this, Alan happened to meet Charles' eyes. There is no impatient emotion in this gaze, but rather a bit of temptation. What is he trying to test me for? There was little time for him to think too much, so Alan pretended to swallow and quickly checked everything he could think of. Got it. This old cunt. He was not stating the facts to me. He was testing me. He is testing me. As for what to test, Alan glanced at the document in his hand. Now that the inheritance procedures have been completed, Charles is not sure whether he knows the inside story and whether he has any resentment towards that person in his heart. What Charles is saying now contains a faint temptation towards Alan. If Alan is sensible enough, he will have to let go of some so-called resentments and treat the accident at home as just an accident. Whenever Alan dared to express any other emotions unexpectedly, maybe in order to protect himself, Alan would be betrayed by His Highness in front of him, just like his father. After thinking through all these twists and turns, Alan felt a little cold. He was really an old cunt. Who would have thought that at this time, a very ordinary sentence could have so many meanings and temptations? Before coming, Alan was mentally prepared for this summons. He knew that this meeting would not be simple, but this is too tiring. He just wants to be a nobleman who waits for death. But if the intrigues continue like this, will his hair start to grow grey when he is 20? Are you so exhausted that you will die young when you are 30, as expected? Like mother, like son, they are not easy to get along with. I understand, Your Highness. I understand very well. The Hill family will always support Your Highness and obey your orders. Very good. Charles looked deeply at Alan. Alan's performance at that moment was nothing to blame. It was very ordinary, with no flaws, and it was perfect. Let's go have a meal. Standing up, Charles motioned for Alan to follow him to the restaurant. With one hand in his pocket, Charles walked slowly and steadily, as if unintentionally, and said, "I heard that 2 days ago, at the gate of your manor, you connived at the servants and shot the clerk of the Department of Noble Affairs. Extremely bad. You almost beat them to death." "There is such a thing. They blocked the car in the middle of the road when I was traveling, Your Highness. I have just returned home not long ago. There are many things at home, and I have no clue to deal with them. The Department of Noble Affairs does this." Alan said this with a somewhat angry tone. Theoretically speaking, it is not illegal for the Ministry of Noble Affairs to bring people from the bank to visit him to urge him to pay inheritance tax. But the owner had just returned home not long ago, and the matter had not been settled yet. It was very immoral to rush him in such a hurry. As for what Alan did, he did not say that he would not pay the inheritance tax. He just paid it late. It was also not illegal, but defaulting on the inheritance tax was also immoral. The way both parties handle things, the eldest brother let alone the second brother. As for the shooting, I didn't kill you or injure you, so what's the fuss about these damn bugs? When Charles heard this, he knew what was going on here. The nobles who could serve in the Ministry of Noble Affairs were all descendants of settled nobles with small family backgrounds and no fiefdoms. They united together. For Alan, a traditional nobleman with a fiefdom in his family, he was born with a kind of hatred, which everyone in the entire aristocratic circle knew very well. And the empire relied on this group of people to check and balance each other within the nobles. To put it bluntly, let them eat dog. Well, you left home 2 days early. Why did you arrive today? Is the road condition along the way already so bad? It took 2 days of walking. Charles made it very clear that he knew Alan's schedule and time very well. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Framing the Blame. Your Highness, I was just about to report this matter to you. Alan pretended to have just remembered and said, when my father was still alive, he set up a small inspection point in Swansea. It was usually a car repair shop, and the boss was an old servant of our family. When I was sorting out my father's belongings recently, I found a letter from the owner of the car repair shop a few days ago. He said that he discovered that local nobles were colluding with outsiders in Swansea. Oh, colluding with outsiders. Charles smiled slightly, as if he was hearing a joke, and didn't take it seriously. Although the Hill family has been monitoring the situation around Carmarthenshire for the king for hundreds of years, but what age is it now? Although their family still has such responsibilities, there is already a more professional department to do this. There is no need for the Hill family's simple methods. Why should they monitor it? To Kids Playhouse. Yes, Your Highness. Our servant is called Old Carl. I went to Swansea this time just to meet him. According to what he said, a group of outsiders came to Swansea recently, speaking with Irish accents. They were in. I quietly inquired about ways to purchase explosives on the black market, and finally colluded with a local Viscount family. The smile on Charles' face instantly became stiff, and his steady steps paused. He slowly turned his head, looked at Alan who was following him, and asked word by word, you mean they fucked Ireland? Accent? Are you still looking for ways to buy explosives on the black market? Yes. Is there any evidence? I'm sorry, Your Highness. Not yet. You know, little mice like them are very cautious. Old Carl just received the wind and reported it to me quickly. For safety reasons, that observation point has been abandoned by me. Yes, Old Carl has evacuated. Charles frowned. He thought it was a trivial matter, but now it actually involves the Irish. If you don't pay attention to this, it will be no small matter. But Charles was still a little confused. Why did the Irish mob go to a shabby place like Swansea? Just because they are close to Ireland? Alan glanced at Charles, who was frowning and thinking, and stared at the floor, his face expressionless, but he snorted in his heart. The move he just made was simply taking advantage of the situation. He lied, but he also told Charles frankly that he had no evidence. At this stage, he was not sure whether Charles knew about the situation of the car repair shop, but he took the initiative to explain it first, distorted the facts, and then took out Old Carl and poured some dirty water on others. By the way, as for the local noble who colluded with outsiders that Alan said, of course it's the Fox family, although Alan blackmailed them for £500,000. Alan didn't know whether Old Fox would give them the money now. But this does not prevent Alan from giving them eye drops. It took a lot of effort to meet Charles. For now, he was Alan's legitimate supporter. Doesn't Old Fox like to play dirty? Since you have the guts to cause trouble for me, Alan, then don't blame me, Alan, for asking for support from my big brother. Alan didn't know whether the Fox family had colluded with the Irish. Anyway, he was just making it up, as long as Charles believed it. The Irish these days are not representatives of purity and kindness, although it is across the sea from the island of Great Britain, and although Northern Ireland in the north of the island of Ireland is also part of the United Kingdom, the people in Southern Ireland are now quite troublesome and a headache for Great Britain. This group of people riots, makes troubles, and even engages in extreme attacks from time to time. What has been the biggest result in the past few years? A heavyweight nobleman from Britain, a certain Marquis, was actually killed by a group of Irish mobs on British soil. You read that right. He was killed by a bomb. The other party is so crazy now. Many years later, a certain person in the Middle East named Lampuller would be a complete junior compared to the current group of Irish mobs, and what Alan just made up was that the Fox family was colluding with a group of outsiders with Irish accents. As for what they colluded with, the rest should be left to the Great His Royal Highness Charles to investigate. Alan also has a backer. If there is a date or no date, He will take 3 shots first. Point, Your Highness Charles. Enter. Fuck them. Although Charles did not know the accuracy of this information provided by Alan, the past loyalty of the Hill family left Charles with no doubts about Alan. Which family is it? The local nobles, or the local nobles of Wales, which is directly under his fiefdom, dare to cheat and collude with outsiders. Charles is very angry now. Your Highness, it's the Fox family. Okay. Very good. The Fox family. Are you that Welsh bumpkin? Humph, I remember. I will ask people from the security department to check them. You don't have to worry about this anymore. Charles was so angry that he laughed. He remembered that Fox was a viscount, right? It seems that he was beaten by the previous Earl of Carmarthen a few years ago. Sure enough, they are not good things. They are all worms in the empire. Okay, Your Highness. Alan glanced at Charles. Hey Fox, you old cunt. Just wait. I found a fun new project for you. Ellen. Long time no see. My niece Lilith. Do you dislike her? The speaker was a beautiful woman with short blonde hair. When she saw Alan walking into the restaurant with Charles, her eyes lit up, but as soon as she opened her mouth, the topic seemed a bit unreliable. How can a princess ask someone about their relationship as soon as they meet her aunt? Diana, I have no idea who Lilith is. Hearing Alan's words, the princess, whom Alan called Aunt Diana, rolled her eyes at Alan and said, Humph. Lilith said she has written you several love letters, but she has never received one. Your reply. The princess in front of her was also from a famous family. Her father was Earl Spencer. As for her relationship with Alan, they are serious relatives. Diana's grandmother was from the Hill family. Theoretically speaking, Diana and Alan, their blood relationship, haven't even been released for the 5th server. In terms of seniority, Diana is Alan's aunt. If this relationship is used to extrapolate, Charles is Alan's uncle. However, the nobility and the royal family do not pay attention to this thing. The reason why they said this when they met today is simply because Princess Diana was a very easygoing and cheerful person. Some of her ideas and ways of doing things are sometimes very unexpected. Come, William, this is your distant cousin Alan Hill, the Earl of Carmarthen. Diana touched the little carrot head next to her who was sitting and waiting for the meal, and pointed at Alan, and introduced him. Alan blinked and looked at the blonde child who tilted his head, and looked at him. Is this actually William? Hello, Your Highness. Hello, cousin. Alan knelt down and did not look down upon the child, because he was young. He stretched out his hand very formally, and shook hands with William. The two of them called each other strangely. Chapter 23. Cousin, can you give me a green-haired cow? After introducing each other, William tilted his head and looked at Alan up and down. This little kid is only 4 years old this year, but his character very bad. Even during Alan's overseas service in the past 2 years, he heard a lot about it. Considering that his mother is Diana, it can be said that he has been in the spotlight of millions of people since he was born. In this era, in Britain, little William is the top. It must have been at the beginning of this year, and his glorious deeds were reported in the paper media. It is said that when William was playing with children at school, he got annoyed and said something on the spot that almost scared their teacher to the point of peeing. The original words are, when I become king, I will let my knights chop off all your heads. If an ordinary child says something like this, adults may treat it as a naughty child and make fun of it. But if this naughty kid is called William, it will be different. If nothing else happens, he can really become the king. This is a bit scary. Later, this matter came to light, and the all-pervasive media published the news. But for the sake of Britain's final dignity, the words reported in the newspaper were slightly modified, and became when I become king, I will let my knights kill you all. Modified from beheading to killing. Thinking about a naughty kid who can say such things, his character is definitely not the gentle and quiet type. Cousin, my mother showed me the photos of you when you were a child. Is that green cow still there? Can you give me one of those green cows? What kind of green-haired cow is that? The smile on Alan's face was a little awkward. He didn't know what the green-haired cow William was talking about. William looked at Alan, who looked confused, and then turned to look at Diana, who was also a little confused. Alan, have you forgotten? Didn't you like riding bulls when you were a kid? I showed William the photo of you riding a bull, and he admired you very much. Diana Gave Alan some off-field tips at the right time. What? Bastard exposed my dark history again. Is it that old guy who After Diana's prompting, Alan finally remembered what the green-haired cow William was talking about was. Talking about this incident really makes me cry. As a good boy born and raised under a red flag, Alan had never ridden a horse in his previous life, but after coming to this world, riding a horse is an essential skill for noble children, whether it is various social activities or daily polar gatherings, hunting, etc. The skill of riding a horse is required, but Alan, he can't. When Alan first time traveled, he couldn't ride a horse. If you let him ride a bicycle or an electric donkey, he'll be fine. But riding a horse, suddenly he saw the tall horse raised at home. The horse's back was taller than his height. When he stood upright, how can he ride it? He had just arrived. He couldn't even speak English, and he couldn't ride a horse. Wouldn't he be exposed? Suddenly, Alan made up a lie and told the old earl that he thought riding a horse was boring and not powerful. He wants to ride a bull. It has to be a cow that he raised with his own hands. In this way, you can also use this as an excuse to refuse many unnecessary social activities in Great Britain. Almost all nobles know how to ride a horse, but not many people have ever ridden a bull. But when the old earl saw that his youngest son was finally not so introverted and started talking, he simply let him and got a Scottish Highland cow for Alan. At that time, in order to cover up, Alan demanded that it must be a calf, and he wanted to raise it by himself and cultivate the emotional relationship between himself and the mount. And this kind of Scottish Highland cattle fits his requirements very well. This kind of cow is a kind of long-haired cow. When it was a child, the Scottish Highland cow was short and chubby. Its golden red hair was a bit like the big golden retriever among pet dogs. It looked very cute, and its personality was particularly docile and very friendly. Get close to people, and can be kept as pets. But once this kind of Scottish Highland cattle grows up, its character will become very tough, and its pair of extremely exaggerated horns will look very domineering. Moreover, the biggest characteristic of this kind of cattle is that they have strong hair, especially on their heads. The adult Scottish Highland cattle have very long hair. The long golden red hair blocks the eyes of the cattle and lowers them. If you want to see the road ahead clearly, the cow will be like a human, shaking its head and throwing its long hair to one side so that its eyes can be exposed to see the road ahead clearly. The visual effects are full, and it is known as the best among the best. As for the cow that Alan raised, he had some bad taste at the time, so he asked his family's beautician to help him dye the long hair on the cow's head green. And by the way, he also gave the cow a hairstyle similar to Elvis Presley. At that time, Alan was riding on his beloved Shammett green hair cow and took a very majestic photo. It seems now that William, who was still a naughty boy, was attracted by the majestic and handsome figure in Alan's photos at that time. Alan's mouth twitched. Wasn't this just a prank when he first came here? Why did such a thing actually get spread? Facing William's expectant gaze. It's hard to say no, but do you really want him to ride a bull? Alan glanced at Charles out of the corner of his eye and saw that he didn't seem to have any interest in expressing his opinion. Diana, who was opposite, saw Alan's eyes and looked away. What's wrong with learning? You have to learn how to ride a bull from me, Alan muttered quietly and suddenly raised his eyebrows. Are children extremely curious about many novel things? That he turned his head and glanced at little William next to him. This guy is still young. His mind is not particularly mature. Many of his consciousness and values have not yet been formed, and his personality is a bit rebellious. Can he be used to his advantage as the Earl of Carmarthen, a serious guarding family of the dignified Prince of Wales? It is not illegal to contact the future Prince of Wales in advance, right? Besides, Alan is also the distant cousin of his little William. Doesn't it make sense for the cousins to keep in touch with each other more often? And in the process of this contact, he instilled hundreds of millions of Oriental thoughts and values into this naughty child, and it became excusable, right? I can't handle your grandma. I can't handle your dad. Why can't I handle you, a naughty kid? I believe that if the Queen knows that his lovely grandson has become more excellent, it must be a surprise and a relief. Right. After thinking about this, Alan instantly put on a smile like treating his biological brother and said, William, cow, I can't give it to you. Ah, that's what a naughty kid is. All his emotions can be clearly seen on his face. When he heard Alan's rejection, William was very disappointed and full of frustration. But, I can take you with me to catch a calf myself. Are you interested? Really? Where to catch him? William's face was instantly filled with surprise. Have you ever heard of Carmarthenshire? Our family's fiefdom. When you are not busy, you can go to me there, and I will take you to catch calves. Alan's voice was full of temptation. The temptation of catching a calf with his own hands was far beyond the ability of a 4-year-old kid to resist. Mom, can I go to Carmarthen with my cousin to catch calves this afternoon? William looked at Diana and asked expectantly. Chapter 24 Special Commissioner Who's? No, William, you have to take vocal lessons and eat in the afternoon. When you have a holiday, go find your cousin. Alan, you have to eat too. Diana rejected William's request with her cold and ruthless cruelty, but she did not object to William going to Alan to catch cattle. But the time was limited to when William was on vacation and had no classes. All right, William, who had returned to being languid again, poked Alan's waist with his small hand, and when Alan lowered his head to look at him, he winked at Alan. I can't help you. I'll wait until you are on vacation. But you have to hurry up. It's too late. The calf will grow up. A man has to catch the cow with his own hands and raise it with his own hands. A cow like that can't be ridden, only then can I feel a sense of accomplishment. Under Alan's temptation again, William deeply remembered the matter of catching cattle. He couldn't wait to go back to class now, finish all the classes quickly, and then go to Carmarthen to find his cousin to catch calves. Sir, your belongings have been delivered to the car by your assistant. Capel took a step behind and walked with Alan outside the manor after a lunch that I don't know how to describe. Alan left. The prince had some other things to deal with in the afternoon. Being able to personally issue him the inheritance documents, plus having a family dinner together, this was already enough. Very friendly treatment. Haha. Please Sir Capel, this is what I should do. In addition, His Highness also told me something. Butler. Capel pointed to the door, and a middle-aged man standing not far from Alan's car introduced. That is the commissioner arranged by the security department to understand the situation. His Highness said that you can cooperate with him. Work. Seeing Butler Capel's actions, the middle-aged man took 2 brisk steps. After seeing Alan, he bowed politely. Dear Lord Carmarthen, I'm the Special Commissioner of the Security Bureau. I'm very sorry to disturb you, but I still want to know something about the situation from you. I don't know if I can take your car. Let's talk while we are walking. Alan turned to look at Capel, and Butler Capel nodded to him, which confirmed the authenticity of this person's identity. I'm very sorry. Thank you for your understanding. The middle-aged man bent over and opened the car door. He put his right hand on the door beam and respectfully asked Alan to get in the car first. Sir Capel, I will take my leave now. Your Excellency, please walk slowly. Butler Capel saw Alan nodding farewell to him and turned slightly sideways to return the greeting. I saw the middle-aged man waiting for Alan to get in the car. Then he gently closed the rear door, walked around the back of the car, and finally opened the left passenger door and got in, waiting for the 2 Bentleys to disappear. Within sight, Capel chuckled. This new Earl of Carmarthen gave him a very different feeling. Different from the previous old Earl. This one gave him a slightly easygoing feeling, without the old-fashioned feeling of the old Earl. But there was also a sense of alienation in the easygoing point. I used to think that the second young master of the Hill family was ordinary, but now it seems that my vision has been narrowed. Sir, you can call me Who's. The middle-aged man sitting in the passenger seat first put his briefcase at his feet, then loosened 2 buttons on his coat. He breathed a sigh of relief before turning around and turning his head to speak to Alan in the back seat. Although sitting in the back seat makes it easier to talk to the Earl, that's not where he, a civilian, should sit, but he still knows it. Well, is there anything I need to know? By the way, where are you going? I don't want to trouble you. Just drive away. I can get off wherever I want to know the situation. Yes, Alan nodded and looked at the middle-aged man named Whose. He has short black hair, a little curly, and a very ordinary face, the type that you wouldn't recognize if you were thrown into a crowd. The coat should be the uniform issued by the Security Bureau. It is kept very clean. There is also a small badge on the left chest and a shirt underneath. The shirt should be his own. The inside of the collar of the white shirt is somewhat frayed, but overall it is still clean. It seems that the conditions in this family are not very good. But someone who can be a commissioner of the Security Bureau and earns a high salary shouldn't be in such a miserable state. Whose right hand was a little blocked by the cuff, and his thumb couldn't be seen clearly, but a callus could be seen from the side of his exposed index finger. These hands touched the gun. Still a veteran. Seeing this, Alan already understood most of the general information a person could get from his appearance. Before Whose could speak, he asked, "Sus, are you married?" Well, this question caught Whose off guard. He was stunned for a moment before replying, "Sir, I have 4 children. The eldest is 12 years old and the youngest is only 2 years old. I can understand it. As a father of 4 children, Nazius's wife is most likely a full-time housewife. She has to take care of 4 children. In other words, although this Whose's income is not low, he has a heavy burden on his family. His salary alone has to support their family of 6. A person can be sent to wait for a count at the entrance of His Highness's private manor to understand the situation. This proves that this middle-aged man is doing well in the Security Bureau and is a capable person. Otherwise, he would not be able to receive such a request to day job. He is capable. His salary is not low. He has many children at home. He has a lot of expenses and life is tight. And he has certain skills. After Alan asked a seemingly random question, the general image of Whose appeared in his mind in a more 3-dimensional manner. "I understand. If you have anything you want to know, just ask, and I will cooperate with you." Alan smiled very kindly at Whose. "Thank you very much for your understanding." Whose took out a folder, flipped through the general information about the Fox family, and then flipped through a few pages before stopping. He glanced at Alan and said, "Your Excellency, regarding what His Highness said about the Fox family's collusion with foreign forces, our Security Bureau has taken over. Can you provide me with more specific information on this?" Alan laughed and didn't rush to answer. Instead, he turned to look out the window. Zyrosh's car was driving very smoothly. In addition, this place was originally outside the suburbs of London, and it was now almost out of the London area. Being able to leave here smoothly, plus successfully receiving the inheritance procedures today, Alan is in a very good mood now. It can be regarded as the best mood he has had in the past few years since time travel. At present, except for the huge and troublesome inheritance tax, he has eliminated most of his troubles. From today on, the entire Carmarthen Hill family has officially changed to a new owner. That is, he is Alan Hill. From now on, he no longer has to look at the faces of most people, and as long as he does not leave Carmarthenshire, he can stay in the Wales countryside and do whatever he wants. In fact, everyone in the entire Hill family manor must focus on him. He is Alan Hill in this house. Whatever he says from now on will be whatever he says. Time travel to the present. A whole few years of experience. Now a British Earl family with hundreds of years of history has just been acquired. Isn't something like this not worth being happy about? Exclamation mark. Chapter 25 Cooperation. Happy to be happy. Alan thought of Fox again. This old guy has a very accurate eye, and he has identified the most vulnerable period of the Hill family, and sets out to test him. In the past few years, Alan's biggest gain is that in this foreign country, humility, kindness, and tolerance are the greatest cruelty to himself. Here, there is no need for these things. Among nobles, etiquette and respectability are always the most superficial. This is a fig leaf. When facing external threats, we must use the most decisive, sharp, and ruthless means to interrupt the invading enemy's methods, so that they dare not offend us again. Only in this way can we get rid of them once and for all. Not only can it solve the immediate trouble, but it can also deter other potential enemies. To suit Charles was a strategy that Alan had thought up in advance. He had advantages, and had a backer behind him. As long as the procedures for his title succession were successfully obtained, he would be able to sue. If not, he would be able to sue point. If it doesn't go well, there will be no future, and it doesn't matter whether we file a complaint or not point. But now, the appearance of who's the special commissioner of the Security Bureau is a bit unexpected by Alan point. He needed to use this short period of time to think carefully about how to use this special commissioner from the Security Bureau point. The information Alan provided was inherently false and could not withstand investigation. He knew this very well, but he still resolutely filed a complaint. There is a key point here. Charles will not care about the details of this matter. He is too busy to care about these small things. He only wants the results. This is feasible. Who? Do you know how many Koreans live in the London area? Both registered and unregistered ones count. Who's was stunned for a moment. Why did he change the topic again point? After thinking for a long time, Who's didn't know why the Excellency suddenly asked this question. But, since he asked, he had to answer. Sir, I'm sorry. I don't know the latest data. Last year, I read a survey report. The report was from the year before last. At that time, there were about 7,000 registered Koreans living in London. As for it's difficult to count unregistered black households, actually, before I could tell His Highness the details about the latest situation of the Fox family, just yesterday, the local police in Carmarthen broke up a Korean criminal gang that has been entrenched near Carmarthen and Swansea for a long time. And this gang, and the Fox family, they have a deep relationship. Was confused. Why were the Koreans involved again? And the Korean evil forces that have been entrenched near Carmarthen and Swansea for a long time. What is there in that place that is worthy of Koreans to occupy? Even if there are evil forces there, shouldn't they be you, Your Excellency? I'm sorry. I don't quite understand, sir. What do you mean? If we want to know more about the situation, we should start from the Koreans captured by the Carmarthen police. Asked cautiously. He couldn't quite understand what Alan meant now. No. Zusi, open your horizons and open your mind. Alan made a flowing gesture with his left hand and continued. These Koreans have traveled thousands of miles to come to our country. It doesn't matter what they do. The important thing is that they are all connected to each other. As long as you follow the clues and arrest a few key people, you can implicate a lot of people. These people who are implicated can also implicate more people. Most of them are in the flesh business. These people cannot be brought to the table. Matter. Alan stared at Uz and said bewilderedly, how long is it until Christmas? Less than 2 months. It's almost the end of the year. Don't you want to change your wife and children to a bigger and more comfortable house? Don't you want to change your children to a school with better education quality? In other words, don't you want to change to a more respectable shirt? His face instantly turned red. Red with shame. Any man would feel extremely ashamed if someone pointed at his collar and said something like this. The person in front of him now was pointing at a nobleman who doesn't want to have a prosperous new year. Isn't this not allowed under current conditions? This sense of shame made Hughes want to jump out of the car right now. His right hand unconsciously fastened the newly loosened collar, coughed twice, and Hughes said with some embarrassment, Sir, you mean to directly attack the bosses behind these Korean gangsters in London, who are engaged in the flesh business? But this is not the same as what does the Fox family have to do with it? This involves a lot of people, Your Excellency. This is against the rules. HMPH. Do you know how much money was involved in the Korean gang that Carmarthen police arrested with only a few hundred members? The liquidity in the bank alone is hundreds of thousands of pounds. Add in fixed assets. This is nearly £100,000, thousands of pounds. And this is just a gang in a remote area. What about the Koreans, who are rooted in London? How much money should they have? Listening to Alan's description, Who's admitted that he was moved. He's not doing it for money. He's just doing it for De Young's safety. These little Korean mice deserve to die. Your Excellency, this is not easy to operate, Your Highness. Okay, I know what you are worried about. Your Highness doesn't understand many things here, so I asked you to come to me to understand the situation. Do you understand? What you do is your business, and I will handle the rest. Alan frowned. This Who's was very rational, and could only interrupt him, and decisively increase the pressure. Who's instantly raised his head, took a deep breath and said, please elaborate. As Long as you arrest a few of the people behind these Korean gangs in London, clean their property, you will be able to have a rich Christmas this year, and the security environment in London will also improve. This is visible to the naked eye. And Fox family, you have arrested so many Koreans, why do you still need me to help you find evidence of their crimes? As Alan's words fell, Hughes nodded and twitched the corners of his mouth slightly. How many unlucky people will be caught by this, Your Excellency, in just one sentence? But this plan works. The nobleman in front of him is His Highness's confidant. Since he said this, Hughes is no longer afraid. His Highness will naturally be dealt with by Mr. Allen. The nobles of Great Britain are immortal. This is not to say that they can live forever, but even if they commit crimes, nobles are rarely sentenced to death. Even if there is a conflict between nobles and nobles, the most they can do is bankrupt the other party and make them go away in despair like dogs. Walk point for such a crime now. For the Fox family, even the title will not be revoked unless all members of the Fox family are dead. Of course, if you offend those people at the top, there may be accidents, for example, a car accident like that of a certain old counterpoint, and like the Fox family, after causing the other party to go bankrupt, they would not be able to survive in the local area. In the end, they would have to leave their hometown, or go to other places in Europe, or the United States. This is also the reason why after so many big nobles bankrupted the small nobles, those nobles settled across the Atlantic and finally settled in North America. As for Hughes, he didn't want to get involved in the intrigues of these nobles. Now, Mr. Allen has explained the interests to him. His Highness is unclear about the details. All he wants is the result. His Highness is not asking their security department to come. He wants to punish the Fox family for being innocent. Isn't this just telling him in disguise that he can do whatever he wants here? Just bankrupt the Fox family in the end. This is the punishment His Highness gave them. As for the process, isn't it, Mr. Allen? The rest is not important. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.